Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1432 of the War News stream. And we have some wild news tonight. We have heard that Iran is now threatening to sink the U.S. aircraft carrier right off their coast. They finally found it after much searching. Also, the Chinese nuclear plans have been leaked today by a top general, at least according to the Chinese government, in a huge escalation. Also, Ukraine has slammed more critical Russian targets tonight, and we have very big news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world here on our Sunday night fundraiser, as we have been able to see major developments, specifically from the People's Republic of China, on the reason why the Vice Chairman and the Joint Chief of Staff of the Central Military Commission were arrested yesterday, as the People's Republic of China has now stated that Zhang Youxia, the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission and the second highest person in the Chinese military apparatus next to Xi Jinping, has been arrested on charges of providing sensitive nuclear documents, intelligence, and secrets of China's nuclear arsenal and nuclear capabilities to the United States of America, while also accepting bribes from lower officials to be able to get higher up positions, including that of the position of the Ministry of Defense of the People's Republic of China. If this information is accurate, which we believe it largely is, this is the largest intelligence and security breach that the People's Republic of China has ever sustained over the entirety of its history since its founding in 1949. Not only that, the USS Abraham Lincoln has been confirmed to have arrived within CENTCOM's area of responsibility over the course of the early hours of this morning, and the Islamic Republic of Iran, using Mohajer 6 drones, has already spotted the aircraft carrier within the northern area of the Arabian Sea and are now threatening to sink the aircraft carrier. This threat has been met with everyone pointing and laughing at Iran on board the USS Abraham Lincoln, but still is showing that the Islamic Republic of Iran is trying to look as strong as they can for now. While they've been doing that, their proxy forces within the entirety of the Middle East, including the Hezbollah office within Iraq, has stated that they will support the Iranians in this full-scale war, and the Yemeni Houthis put out some sort of a weird video today, almost an ad run, where they threatened to sink further commercial shipping within the area of the southern Red Sea. Meanwhile, U.S. forces are continuing to move into the area, with larger amounts of air defenses now being properly set up by the U.S. Armed Forces throughout the wider area, allowing for significant amounts of air defense operations to be conducted. And as far as the United States strategic outlook is concerned, the United States is prepared to defend against an Iranian preemptive strike if that happens. Meanwhile, the Israelis have also stated to civilian airlines that this week will be an incredibly significant week and that they should stay generally out of the area and should limit their flights throughout the entirety of the Middle East. In southern Lebanon, the Israelis have also continued their strikes on Hezbollah forces within the area, hoping to eventually drive them at least underground before the larger strikes on Iran begin. The United States has also started to move significant amounts of forces into the Diego Garcia area on the British Chagos Islands, while at the same time, the French have now arrested the captain of the Grinch, which was the vessel that they seized just several days ago off of the coast of France's Riviera. French Riviera is the best way to describe that. We have also been able to see that the Russian Federation has had to deal with some major issues over the course of the day as well, as Ukrainian armed forces have conducted significant drone and missile strikes throughout their territories once again, and Murmansk remains without power, which is the headquarters of the Russian Northern Fleet. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces have also inflicted significant casualties onto the Russian Federation's armed forces and have generally stopped any real advances over the course of the day, while also inflicting nearly 1,000 wounded and killed onto the Russian army. We have also seen that an incredibly rare EA-37B has taken off from the United States of America and is making its way to the Middle East, which is once again clearly showing us that the United States is still in the preparatory phase of conducting a strike on Iran, meaning that strikes on Iran are not expected to be happening soon and will most likely happen in the next weekend or the weekends afterwards. We have a humongous amount of news to cover tonight, especially in terms of its importance, and we are going to be making sure to go through our news, starting with our largest stories first and then working our way on down into the smaller news throughout the night, of course, as tradition dictates on the channel. I do also have to mention that tonight is the fundraiser for none other than Ransom for Ukraine, an amazing nonprofit that has helped to save lives in Ukraine for years, and we are continuing to support and fundraise so that way further lives of families and innocents within Ukraine can be saved from the clutches of the brutal war currently happening on the front. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into our largest story of the news tonight, which brings us directly on into the People's Republic of China, the only piece of news that we had coming out of the country today. News has emerged that Zhang Youxia, the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission of the People's Republic of China, has now been accused by the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese authorities of giving nuclear secrets to the United States of America. This was cited by multiple sources throughout the day and is the official running statement of the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Bribery allegations were also leveled against General Zhang Youxia, whose downfall carries implications for the country's military readiness. In short, the People's Republic of China has stated that Zhang Youxia has provided critical information about China's nuclear triad, their deterrence policy, and also their changing nuclear doctrine that is currently developing at this time, which is what is called limited deterrence. Up until now, the People's Republic of China has only possessed a minimal nuclear force of around 400 nuclear warheads. These nuclear warheads were based on land and also inside of their nuclear submarines at sea, which are the Jin-class submarines, as a form of nuclear deterrence against any direct preemptive nuclear strike on the People's Republic of China, meaning that it only emphasized a mutually assured destruction doctrine against nations who conduct preemptive nuclear strikes on the Chinese. Originally, this nuclear doctrine was actually geared against the Soviet Union during the 1970s and 80s, as significant border clashes in Manchuria between the two sides had brought China and the Soviet Union to a near full-on war during that time. After the collapse of the Soviet Union and the shrinking risk that the Russian Federation poses a major strategic threat to the Communist Chinese, a lot like the United States of America, began to realize that their significant adversary was actually across the Pacific, with the United States of America. And while that has generally changed the rivalry that they've had from the Soviet Union to the United States of America, their nuclear doctrine has largely remained unchanged from those very first days when it began to emerge against the Soviet Union in the 1970s and 80s. However, recently within the past few years, China has started to change their nuclear doctrine into one that's a little bit more invested in their strategic interest outside of China's borders, meaning that they are moving into what they call a limited nuclear deterrence doctrine. That means that China is starting to move very similarly into the United States form of a deterrence doctrine, to where any existential threat to China's strategic interests could invoke some form of a tactical nuclear response. And China has also started to manufacture a larger amount of warheads, approximately from what we know in the outside world, outside of China, somewhere around roughly 100 per year, with some of those being tactical nuclear weapons. It is believed that China is doing this in its preparation for an invasion of Taiwan, to be able to put forward its nuclear arsenal against the United States of America, and to threaten that any sort of U.S. involvement in a potential war in Taiwan would require the People's Republic of China to use tactical nuclear weapons and possibly strategic level weapons, due to the existential threat that it would pose, because China believes that the island of Taiwan is an unalienable part of the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China at large. That means that they would be able to force a nuclear confrontation, or at least threaten the force of a nuclear confrontation, if the United States tried to intervene in the support of Taiwan. And it is that specific part of China's changing nuclear doctrine, the limited deterrence policy, that is believed to have been shared with the United States of America by Zhang Youxia. From what we would understand, he has most likely been contacted by the CIA if the story is accurate, and the CIA encouraged him to share that intelligence with the United States of America for some form of a reward or benefit in return from the United States.
I wonder how soon, like how far back did he actually start giving this information? Because once again, it's the allegation. They're saying that this guy, the Chinese top general, started giving information over to the U.S. intelligence agencies. That's the claim. Of course, China could be lying about that, but I wonder how far back this goes, because we did hear that a few months back, the CIA and all the other intel agencies, they started a new campaign to try to get Chinese defectors to hand over information to the West. And it sounds like, if the claim is true, it sounds like it actually worked. And there was a lot of people apparently willing to rat out the Chinese government at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, it really does seem like that's the case. And that actually is something of a big question that we have at the moment from a lot of people in the chat, is whether or not this general is being framed. Does this story even seem to stand up to scrutiny? Does it even look like it's true at all? And it seems as though a lot of people are believing that it might be some form of a framing. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so it looks like 42% of the audience believes that the Chinese general is being framed by the Communist Party to eliminate him in a political purge, while 34% said it sounds like a real charge and the general could be guilty of the crime, while 14% said I'm 50-50 on the new info. So me and the enforcer were discussing this a lot off the air. We were trying to debate what would actually this situation really be in reality. And I think personally, this could be a real charge. I think that is probably the case. Once again, he's not been proven guilty. I'm not sure if he's going to get a fair trial inside of China. There's very few people that get charged with crimes like these and then are subsequently proven innocent. That's usually not the case. So I think it's a real charge. I think this general might have actually given over nuclear secrets to U.S. intelligence, because it does paint a really, really bad picture for the security inside of China. It also embarrasses China quite a bit that their top secrets, nuclear secrets, are being given away to one of their largest geopolitical adversaries. So I don't think they would choose to put this information out in the public, even as a way to frame the general. This makes China look really, really bad. So this sounds like it could be real. I'm with the 33%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to also be with the 33% as well. This sounds like a legitimate charge. And the reason why, folks, is that the People's Republic of China, much like any other authoritarian government, heavily relies on the public appearance that they are a unified bloc to be able to get any sort of respect globally, and to also make people believe that China is a coherent and operational governmental force. If this news is not true, this paints China in an extremely embarrassing light. To put this into an equivalent perspective here in the United States, this would be like the U.S. Secretary of Defense providing top secret information about America's Ohio-class nuclear-powered submarines to the Russian Federation, or better yet, the entire operational ability of our nuclear arsenals, and also the Patufic Space Force Base with its firm satellite systems that observe the Russian Federation and China for any possible nuclear launches. That would be highly embarrassing for the United States of America if that sort of information came out. It's even more embarrassing for the Chinese, because unlike the United States of America, China relies on an incredibly large optic, even if it is untrue, that China has uncorruptible individuals in charge of their armed forces. This guy is hugely important to China. This is basically saying the guy who is in charge of everything, literally the right-hand man of Xi Jinping as far as the military is concerned, has just ratted out our top secret nuclear doctrine and also how it actually works in great detail to the United States of America. That's not something that they would admit if it did not happen. It just makes China look extremely weak. And not only that, it makes it look like everybody in the People's Liberation Army will give up top secrets of the state for a price. If the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission is willing to sell secrets to the United States of America, that means that any brigade level commander, any group army commander, any theater commander, or any branch commander could also sell their secrets to the United States of America as well if they're given the proper price. And that's not something that the Chinese would want to project to the entirety of the world by making the statement. If this was actually something that did not happen, they wouldn't make a claim like this, because they also are not trying to look at souring relations with the United States, at least for now, because they want to try and keep the United States at least trading with China up until the very moment that they go to war with Taiwan. If they cut off that trade right now, that's not only going to damage the U.S. economy heavily, it's also going to damage the Chinese economy massively. China relies a lot on trade with the United States of America, more so than the United States relies on trade with them, although it's very close at that point. But that would still damage China's economic abilities and already worsen the fragile economic realities that they have in their country. So they wouldn't want to say this for a pretext to start severing U.S. relations, because that will only make their pre-invasion of Taiwan scenario even far worse and less manageable than it would be right now. So I would have to say, I would generally be with a 33%. I believe that this actually is a legitimate charge and claim. And they've also added on that apparently Zhang Youxia has also been bribed for positions below him, including the Secretary of Defense of the People's Liberation Army. So apparently he was bribed to give away a position to a government official who may have had no experience or any credible abilities to command as the Secretary of Defense of the PLAA, except for the fact that he gave him enough money, Zhang Youxia, if that allegation is correct as well, for him to get the position. So it appears that at the moment, this sort of an allegation is wildly embarrassing for the People's Republic of China, and not only that, the People's Liberation Army.
Yeah, I would say so. Also, by the way, if they wanted to frame this guy, like, for example, I see a lot of people doubting the narrative that's out there that this guy allegedly sold nuclear secrets to the United States. I still think, personally, I think it has some actual legitimacy behind it. But if they wanted to frame him, I mean, they could have done it in a much less embarrassing way. Like, they could have simply said the guy was accepting bribes. They could have said something like that, and they could have ran with that narrative. So, I mean, it's not a good thing to say that your nuclear secrets are getting leaked. And if they're trying to frame the guy, there was plenty of other ways to do it. So that's why I think it seems like it's more real than fake. I'm leaning toward the idea that it is real. And also, by the way, I wonder if this is indeed the case and you did leak it, what was the primary motivation behind it? Does he hate Xi Jinping so bad that he was willing to sell out his own country? Or is it because the economic situation is so bad inside of China that they're getting desperate and they're selling their own people out to try to make a buck? I'm not really sure what would lead to this exactly, because that's a massive step to take. And also, I mean, the CCP, they've got pretty decent intelligence services, so the odds of being found out were pretty high. And obviously, apparently they did find out because he's been outed. So, I mean, that was a risky move and it did not pay off.
But here's another thing that I see some people saying. They're framing him because he was against Xi. Maybe he was against Xi, but we also have to remember, if he's against Xi, what in the world would give him the best position to see Xi's abilities weakened? Ratting to the United States. I mean, that would be a pretty big one. The United States is China's largest rival at the moment globally, and China is our largest rival. So what better way to put Xi in a weaker position than to basically tie his hands in foreign policy, because Xi would understand and know that top secrets of China's nuclear deterrence have just been given to the United States, and we're going to have the jump on them if they ever try and use a nuclear weapon by a significant period of time. That is something that is incredibly important to understand. And not only that, if they wanted to frame the guy, they have gone through in anti-corruption purges, and they have gotten a load of people in the past on a myriad of different charges. And there are charges in China that a lot of people aren't even thinking of that they can get people on. For example, anti-revolutionary thought. that is an easy one to get someone on, like Zhang Youxia. You could just say he was starting to emphasize anti-revolutionary thought, and he was becoming a bourgeois, or not a proletariat. He was not emphasizing Maoist-Leninist thinking, so on and so forth. You could use any party line in the CCP's constitution to get this guy on and make it look more so like he was just a corrupt official instead of a rat that just completely compromised China's security abilities to the United States of America. So this is clearly something that actually, in my opinion, quite truly did happen, because there is no reason that the People's Republic of China would lie about such an embarrassing reality and fact that the guy has just informed the CIA on top secrets.
It may be so. Also, by the way, there is another idea I just saw in the chat. SC Dear Girl said this is all a ruse. The information that was passed was likely false, and that's probably the situation. Now, that is a possibility. That is a good point right there. This could have been maybe a loyalty test. Maybe there was some test that Xi Jinping put his top guys through and putting out fake information, trying to see if that information would get leaked to the United States. That could be one way to find rats within the government. But at the same time, though, the general does have to know the actual plans because he is a general. So if the time comes to launch nuclear weapons, he can't use this fake information that's being passed to him to actually command the military. He would have to have the real information. So a guy this powerful, this guy was like second from the top, third from the top. He was very, very powerful in the Chinese military. The idea that he would be passed fake information is very slim, in my opinion. Maybe somebody further down the rung or more in the middle of the pack, maybe they would have gotten fed fake information to test their loyalty, but not the second or third highest guy. Like, I think that's not really real.
And also another thing, I see people continuously saying, well, there's been a purge going on for a while. This could be an extension of that purge, but these charges might be legitimate. And I think a lot of people are not really considering the fact that China prides itself heavily on its reputation globally, which is a large part of its propaganda initiatives, and this goes completely against that. It's one thing to say that they're rooting out corrupt officials, because corrupt officials is a big thing that China could say, look, we're a great government because we find rats, no matter how important they are, that are trying to conduct some form of corruption through bribery or selling off vital equipment from the Chinese army to make a buck, and we're getting these people and holding them accountable. It's entirely different to put out a story saying this guy has literally compromised our entire nuclear arsenal and its deterrent abilities because he just sold out all of these secrets to the United States. And not only that, some people are forgetting, because some people are also saying, well, yeah, but couldn't that be a ruse to fool the United States? Possibly, but at the same time, if that allegation is true, they're not really fooling the United States because the CIA either has the intelligence or they don't. So there's really no way to fool the CIA because they either have the intelligence or they don't. And putting out the statement today isn't going to make the CIA wake up and go, oh, wait a minute, we actually got all of this top secret information from Zhang Youxia about their nuclear deterrence capabilities that we need to go find now, that's somewhere in a file somewhere in the building in McLean, Virginia. I mean, that's not going to be happening either. So I would have to say, I think that this is a legitimate sort of a charge, because while we have seen a lot of anti-purge activity last year, and also to some extent a little bit of it this year, not a whole lot of it, it appears that this sort of an allegation may be a legitimate one. And this may also be a push against Xi's government, because also you have to remember another thing, folks, this is a bit of statescraft here, is that if someone hates Xi Jinping and they're a part of the PLA and they're believing that Xi Jinping is selling out China and that he's basically destroying all of the core tenets of what made communist China China, these people can become disillusioned with the kind of world and nation that they're living in. That also could flip them to being a CIA informant, like this guy is being alleged of at the moment right now. That is something I think a lot of people are missing here in the equation, is that, yes, there are a lot of people in the PLA who openly dislike Xi Jinping, and a large part of the PLA believes that he is not an actual leader of China, more so fronting as one while he's selling out the entire country for his own ambitions and interests. But at the same time, some people also don't understand there's multiple different reactions to that sort of a line of thinking. Some people might start to try and see about overthrowing Xi. Others might become disillusioned and think that it's hopeless and then just try and find some way to screw Xi over because they don't believe that China's worth representing or helping anymore, and they could sell secrets to the United States. A lot of people have done that. I mean, look at this, for example. For example, look at all of the people in the United States of America. Let's think of a few. Let's see, Maddie. Who was that guy who revealed some of the top secrets from the National Security Agency and then had to go running off?
Snowden?
Yeah, Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden was involved in, I believe, the NSA, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah.
instead of finding out critical information and then trying to conduct some form of a coup against the U.S. government, he basically just outed every single secret a bit of information that he was able to find and then went running for the hills. You know, you could say that that would be stupid for him to do, and that wouldn't make any sense because there had been open dissent in the U.S. government for a while, and that wouldn't line up with the narrative. But that's what he did. So why in the world would it be out of the question to say that someone like Zhang Youxia could do something similar?
He could, but the difference is though with Snowden, Snowden was operating from a different perspective. He was operating on this idealistic view that somehow he was going to release information. I'm not sure if he was necessarily trying to become a hero or not, but he was trying to be, I guess you could say, a hero for American democracy. That was his motivation behind it, and also he did have an escape plan in mind. Like he knew he was getting out before he could get captured, and he knew exactly which country to go to avoid extradition. So he had that planned out pretty thoroughly. He ended up getting caught up in Russia because he couldn't get his passport to work to get somewhere else, but he got stuck in Russia. He didn't actually choose to go to Russia. He got stuck there. But this fella here in China is a little bit different. He holds a very high profile military position. He clearly didn't have an escape plan or he would have already left. So this seems a lot different to me. It seems much different.
Well, you know, he could have been caught in the middle of providing secrets, and he may have thought that his position was secure, but then PLA SSF forces were on him, or some other form of an internal security force was on to him and starting to understand that he was an informant. And they may have provided him some false information at some point to see if he would disseminate that as well, or they may have caught him clearly in the act of providing intelligence secrets to the United States of America, and then they caught him in the midst of the act. It's possible.
Possibly so. And also, you got to think if he truly sold American secrets to the Chinese secrets to the American CIA, how did he get that to the CIA? There's only a couple ways you can do that. You can contact the CIA through a secure channel, like sometimes Telegram and places like that, or you walk straight into a U.S. embassy in China and you go give the information in person and you simply give a statement with the information behind it. So there's obviously surveillance. I mean, these top generals, I'm sure, are being surveilled heavily by their internal security services. So, you know, I would imagine that he might have known the odds of getting caught were pretty high if he actually did this, which is also kind of questionable to me. It's like, why would he do something that he knows is going to get him pretty much in a jam pretty quick because he's going to get caught and then not have an escape plan? That part is a little suspicious, I will admit.
Well, I mean, you know, he may have thought that he was safe. I mean, you know, there's a decent amount of North Koreans who have also done similar and thought they were safe, and then they end up disappearing and we never hear from them again. So, you know, it could have been a situation like that. Because, you know, the guy might have been getting incredibly comfortable, wildly confident that he probably wasn't going to be caught for a while, so there doesn't need to be an escape plan, and the Chinese government may have given him no tip-off that they were on to him, and then they got him. You know, there's also the case of that as well. Many people have been caught that way in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. A lot of people in the Soviet Union were caught that way, where they thought they were in a comfortable position and that no one would catch on to them, and then one day the KGB breaks into their house and immediately nabs them and sends them off to a gulag off in Siberia somewhere.
Yeah, possibly so. Also, I do see some people saying, well, he didn't necessarily have to walk into an embassy himself. That is true. I mean, he could have been approached. That's very possible as well, because obviously we have agents inside of China. That's just a known fact. He could have been approached by a recruiter from the CIA and tried to recruit him, and then they could have developed a relationship, and then he might have passed the information along then. So it's just they have to have a secure way to get it, because, I mean, you can't just like show up to a restaurant or something inside of China and say, here's the information. They're watching the general like a hawk, so they're going to know where he's at. So if they see him meeting with some random person over and over and over, they're going to know something's up, and they're going to obviously nab him.
And also, I saw Plant Lord say, why I think it's a fake, he has power and he's rich. So what could the CIA offer but asylum in the United States? That's a great question. And it doesn't, sometimes the motivator is not getting a material object. And there are examples that throughout the whole of history where people did not want material items to flip. A great one from U.S. history, and I'm sure many people will remember this name from elementary school, is Benedict Arnold of the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War. The British didn't offer him anything, really, for him to flip against the Revolutionary Army or the Continental Army of the United States to join the side of the British. Benedict Arnold just got disillusioned with the revolutionary cause because he had been looked over for a position as a general of an army in the Continental Army, and for that reason he believed that the revolution wasn't really looking for the brightest, it was looking more so for cronies, and for that reason, no other reason than that, he flipped to the side of the British. The British didn't offer him anything in terms of money, money or material wealth or a position as a significant colonial leader if the British succeeded in the revolution. He just got disillusioned with the cause and then jumped ship. What about Rudolf Hess? Rudolf Hess was Hitler's right-hand man at the beginning of the Second World War in 1939 and 1940, yet he got disillusioned with Hitler and his cause, then boarded a little plane and flew it straight to Britain, and then landed on the coastline, trying in some sort of an insane attempt to negotiate a ceasefire between the British and the Germans in 1940. There was nothing that the British offered him to flip like that. He just became disillusioned and then flipped overnight. Or what about all of the different Soviet diplomats and officials that completely flipped tail? Like, for example, the pilot who flew on a training exercise straight from their training flights near to the area north of Vladivostok and the Sakhalin Islands, and flew straight to a U.S. airbase inside of northern Japan and gave over his MiG-25 and then asked for asylum. There was nothing that the CIA or anyone had requested from him before. He just became disillusioned with the Soviet cause and wanted out, and knew that the MiG-25 and handing it over to the United States Air Force was his way to freedom. Sometimes people don't have to be given something material to flip. Sometimes they just become so disillusioned that they are willing to take any actions to see that whatever they believe is not right is fixed or generally is screwed over one way or the other. So I hope that does address it the best I can, because as far as motivations, there's plenty of them, and as far as how this is going for China, this is such an embarrassing announcement for them. There is no way, in my honest opinion, that this story could have been fabricated. I mean, even honestly, if this allegation is real, they probably would have wanted to keep that under wraps as much as possible. And I'll also say this. Another thing that might happen, and another thing that may have made China say this, is that the President of the United States generally says a whole bunch of stuff. And if the CIA actually did get that information from Zhang, they may have been fearful that if they arrest him and announce fake charges, the President of the United States might just come out and say, they arrested him because they gave secrets, and then they basically have been outed then, so they had no choice but to come out and make it public that the guy actually sold secrets to the United States, which is decently likely. But anyways, with that, a lot of people are talking about the nuclear information and whether it's fake or whether it might be authentic. And of course, folks, I want to say on this is pure conjecture and speculation, even on my end, because we actually don't know what information has been provided, rather than the Chinese have stated that it's key nuclear deterrent information, secrets, and strategies. So it's a very broad statement, but we don't have particular detail. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so do you think it was fake information that was given to U.S. authorities if it is true, or was it real information? 48% said no, it's likely real information, while 29% said the information is likely fake, and 23% said the leaks are likely a cover to frame the top Chinese general, and that's probably the only reason for it. And I would still say I'm leaning toward the idea that it is likely real information. I'm still leaning toward that, because this is way too embarrassing for the CCP, for this to be a simple framing job on the general. It seems way too damning for the security of China's government. So for that reason, that makes me lean toward the idea it's real, but we don't know that for a fact. It is a bit interesting. Also, by the way, I do want to say something real quick. I see people talking about Snowden, and they're talking about this Chinese general here. The Chinese general allegedly is revealing strategy or strategic plans for the Chinese military. That's a lot different than what Snowden did. Snowden released information believing that he was uncovering criminal activity by the United States government. So that is a bit different. I know people have their different opinions about Snowden. Some people believe he's a traitor. Some people believe that he's a hero. I'm not going to weigh in on that personally. I'm going to sort of withhold my opinion on that. But Snowden was doing it at least in his own words, to expose criminal behavior that the government was conducting. So the motivation is clearly different here. We don't know anything that the Chinese general might have done that he believes was uncovering a crime by the CCP. Well, we haven't heard that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's most likely real information, because some of the information that would be provided doesn't even have to be entirely honest with y'all, that insanely detailed. Like, for example, this is something that is very big in China's nuclear doctrine, are their Type 94 Jin class nuclear submarines. These carry their intercontinental ballistic missiles around the world and generally can operate somewhat deep into the Pacific, generally close enough to be well within striking distance of the United States of America, even with IRBMs. So what information may have been provided by Zhang is predetermined patrol locations for these submarines to basically just sit around and wait for one day, if the order's ever given, for them to fire their nuclear weapons at the United States of America. Basically giving the U.S. Navy the one-up to know that if it appears that China might use nuclear weapons, to go ahead and send out destroyers into those areas and start dropping dips down into the water and see if they can hear a nuclear submarine down there somewhere and get it lined up to be destroyed if it is seen that the Chinese might conduct a nuclear attack on the United States. Another thing that they might have said is key sorts of actions to look for that the intelligence agency could track within the Chinese government to see if they are preparing for a nuclear exchange, such as important leaders traveling to certain locations like bunkers, bases, and so on. They could see that those actions are telltale signs that China would prepare for a nuclear attack on the United States, and that would once again give the United States clear and evident information to work off of to either prepare some sort of a preemptive nuclear strike or to be able to prepare for a defensive scenario where they try and shoot down as many Chinese ICBMs as possible while then responding defensively with their own nuclear arsenal. There was a lot of information that they could have given that would pretty much start to make China's nuclear doctrine and defense strategy and limited deterrence doctrine that they're now implementing basically start to crumble or fall apart, or large parts of it may be significantly weakened, that could give the United States an upper hand or a major strategic advantage in that sort of a scenario. So I would say that the information is probably credible because not a lot of it has to be extremely advanced. I mean, it's not like he has to tell you exactly how a computer would work in an ICBM silo or a bunker. He might just have to tell simple information like that, and that could make the entire strategic deterrence doctrine fall apart. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, folks, we are going to be moving on from our Chinese news and on into the Middle East, where we've also gotten other major news over the course of the day. The USS Abraham Lincoln has been confirmed, according to the U.S., to have finally arrived in the area of CENTCOM's area of responsibility. This footage was actually filmed and published today by the United States of America's Central Command Area of Responsibility, showing the USS Abraham Lincoln and limited parts of its strike group within the area. Actually, correction. Let me hold up. That looks like the USS Gerald R. Ford. Hold up. Wait a minute. Is this? This is an insert clip. They lied. Okay, so I'm sorry. This isn't a lie. They just put in an insert clip. Did they mention that though? Let's see here. This appears to generally be stock footage of the Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group in another scenario. So we're actually going to be moving to the other one where we do have the Mohajer 6s that the Iranians flew out of Iran that actually did take pictures today of the USS Abraham Lincoln. The conning tower here does match up, which is clearly an indicator that this is the USS Abraham Lincoln. And we can see that a large amount of its FA-18 Super Hornets and other aircraft are on the deck at this moment and do appear to be in a general configuration for deck-borne operations at some point here within the near future. It also does appear that at the moment, the Islamic Republic of Iran is threatening to attack and destroy the USS Abraham Lincoln if it continues to remain within the area of responsibility. According to the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps media, they made the official statement, "We issue strong warnings against the approach of the combat group of the U.S. carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, confirming our ability to sink it using various advanced hypersonic missiles in the event of a provocation." Oh, well, I have not heard yet, folks, of a hypersonic missile actually being able to track a moving target. So I would have a feeling that that's probably a load of hot air. But beyond that, a lot of people are wondering whether or not the Iranians would actually try and destroy let's see, it is a Nimitz class, I was about to say a Nixon class, a Nimitz class aircraft carrier and its carrier strike group. It just doesn't really seem like Iran would have that capability. And a lot of people are wondering, is that threat a whole load of hot air, or does it have some actual teeth behind it? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
So do you think that Iran has the balls to go out there and actually strike the USS Lincoln aircraft carrier? Because they always threaten stuff like this all the time. And according to the Iranians, they have wiped out most of the U.S. Navy that's ever showed up to the Middle East. I think they've said they've struck a whole bunch of different U.S. ships before. And it was obviously total bogus. It wasn't real, obviously. And they've claimed a lot. Like the Iranians love to play a make-believe. They live in an alternative universe, kind of like Star Trek. But what do you think about that? Is it a real threat? 61% said Iran Iran's threat is total hot air and not to be taken seriously, while 25% said Iran's threat is credible and real, and 10% said only time is going to tell whether or not Iran really means business. And I would say personally, I don't think that Iran means business. Like, first of all, they they got to be able to strike the carrier. That's problem number one. They really can't strike the carrier, so that's a huge issue. Also, by the way, the carriers got all these fighter jets on board that will be doing defense, shooting down missiles flying around everywhere. So the moment that Iran decides to retaliate, most of those missiles are going to get shot down by the U.S. Air Force. So I don't think the threat is credible. I think it's hot air. I'm with it 62%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I doubt it, because this is Iran's most advanced version of a hypersonic missile, along with a hypersonic glide vehicle, and there's a lot of questionability here to whether these even work. I mean, you can see that these things are held together by Phillips screws. You can literally see the screw holes right there if I zoom in on that picture. There it is, right on the mouse cursor. Here's another one. And there's also some sort of a clear mold line right here in between the two parts. I mean, this just shows poor craftsmanship. And according to the Iranians, this was a working variant of the Fata 2. Not only that, these have never been confirmed to be able to operate locking on to a target and being able to hit it while it's moving. Basically, every hypersonic missile in the world right now that we know of largely is designed to hit a static, stationary target. We've never heard of one that is able to actually hit a moving target. And this is a very important thing, folks, because while some people can say, oh, yeah, I can definitely hit a moving target, I mean, that wouldn't be that hard. Technologically, that's actually fairly complicated. On top of that, how in the world did the Iranians guide this thing towards the aircraft carrier? Do they have some form of a surface radar on land that's able to pick up the Abraham Lincoln, and then they fire the missile vectoring in on off of that data? If so, that's a heavy weak point. The U.S. could just airstrike those radars on shore and knock them out before they can even be used at all. Another thing that would have to be asked is if this thing has a sensor in it, how in the world does it maneuver to be able to hit the moving target? Because any sort of a computational error will lead to this thing missing due to its high rate of speed, but more so the fact this thing cannot hit a moving target. This is the only hypersonic that they have, rather than the Fata 1, is the Fata 2. Neither of them can hit a moving target, meaning that this is a load of bogus. And once again, I want to tell everyone, just to reiterate this again, no nation on the planet that we know of right now has ever announced that they have a hypersonic missile that can actually track and hit a moving target of any type. Every single one of them is only made to hit stationary targets. So I would have to say I think that statement is a load of bogus, and they might be able to try and blind fire this thing at an inputted GPS coordinates of where they believe the carrier might be at some point by the time it's about to hit target. But it's most likely going to miss if that's the case. You know, an aircraft carrier could just maneuver within about the 3 minutes of time that it has and basically get out of the way by either several dozen feet or even thousands of feet by that point. Who's to say? But moving on out of that, though, I would have to believe that's a load of BS from the Iranians. Additionally, we also know that inside of Iran, it appears that they're trying to conduct tests of their air defense systems. In this clip right here, we can see out of Bandar Abbas that some sort of loud sounds are being reported, which makes us believe that there is air defense drills going on in this area. That sounds like air defense fire. We also got another...
It does. It sounds like they're getting scared to me. It sounds like they're trying to run through the paces and scare people off.
You know, another ththing that I just thought of, Matthew, that's really funny, is that the Iranians say they have super weapons that can take out a Nimitz-class carrier. Where in the world were those super weapons when a Nimitz-class carrier was right off their coast last time, and also in the Mediterranean? Where in the world was it against them?
Oh, remember they sunk one of our ships back in the day. You remember when they were saying they sunk one? I can't remember which one they said that they sunk, but they said one of the infidels, like aircraft carriers or like destroyers or something, have been sunk and destroyed. Inshallah. And I was like, what? It's like there's nothing that's been destroyed. I think that was their super weapon, the imaginary Crayola.
Bruh, their super weapon is their imagination. Like, it's like really corny sounding. But we also got to see another clip out of Bandar Abbas, also showing us the air defense drill continuing on.
There's something up there. Is they running around?
We do not want a Vault 4.
همین 2-3 دقیقه قبلم یه صدای انفجار بعد همینجا اومد. فکر کنم پایگاه لویزان بود، نمیدونم دقیقاً. تهران یک شنبه 5 بهمن یا 6 بهمن.
Well, that's the end of that clip right there, but still showing us a little bit of the air defense fire going on in Bandar Abbas. Moving on out of that, I have seen some people asking questions about how a hypersonic could be used against the carrier, and some people are saying, well, you know, what if they try and fire it at the predetermined location? I actually spoke about that a minute ago, but I'll actually explain how that would work in practice. If the Iranians are firing at the carrier group, they're most likely going to be firing a larger amount of missiles rather than just the hypersonics at the carrier. That's if they even work. So we would assume that there's going to be a larger amount of missiles like the Granites and others that the Iranians would fire, meaning that the carrier would already be in a defensive situation against incoming vampires, as they're called by the Navy, which are anti-ship missiles that are flying towards the carrier group. That means that every single ship would be conducting evasive maneuvers and would be altering their course as they travel. They would not be traveling in a straight line to that point. Those hypersonics would have to be fired then, blindly guessing with a very slim chance that it would be correct exactly where that carrier is going to be when it impacts the sea floor, and well, more so the sea surface. And that is going to be pretty tough to be able to do, because the carrier could move unpredictably at that point, and by the time the hypersonic arrives, which will be about 3 to 4 minutes after launch, that carrier may be several hundred feet away from the impact site, or even a mile or more away from the impact site, meaning that it would not be a successful hit. And basically at that point, that's like throwing darts into a dark room and hoping to hit something, at least firing it that way. And that wouldn't really be a reliable way to be able to hit a target. I mean, technically you could try to do that, but it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack at that point, or trying to throw something into the void of space and hope that it hits something within the next few minutes. But anyways, moving on from that and on up into Tehran, we also did get to see that some protests are still going on inside of Tehran, and we have been able to see that there has been a large amount of people who have taken to their cars to protest the regime by just honking the horn a lot.
This person talking here is really sounds familiar.
Like, man, it's Kermit. Yo, what's up, Kermit? And we also get to see another clip, also showing us people still screaming from their buildings as a form of protest. And let me get that one for y'all. People are still trying to show out in Tehran, and I do have to respect them for that. But most of them are not willing to get out and stand in the streets because they're scared of being shot by the Iranian internal security services. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that while Iran is still going and dealing with the protests in the streets, and U.S. forces like the Abraham Lincoln have officially arrived in the area, we are seeing that inside of Iraq, the Office of Hezbollah in Iraq, because, you know, it's kind of like a corporate institution, has apparently called for backing a full comprehensive war if the Iranians are attacked, meaning that Hezbollah in Iraq might try and support Iranian actions in counterattacks if possible. Additionally, we've also heard within Western Yemen that the Houthis have put out this video today, which was pretty garbage, I'd have to say. But it was insinuating that they'll return to attacking commercial shipping within the southern Red Sea if the U.S. strikes Iran. But here's the little clip that they put out today. And I'll have to mute
music.
that. Yeah, they probably don't have a license for it, I would assume, you know, terrorists and all. But we can see them here showing a Russian minesweeper. So apparently they're threatening to blow up the Russian Navy.
Oh, man, that would be a shame if they misidentified the Russian Navy.
Man. And we can see them circling an area on the map. This actually would be in the Gulf of Aden, because right now we're looking at the map from this area at the bottom of the screen being the north, and this is the south. That is the strait right down here next to the Houthi-controlled area of Yemen. I don't think they have any advanced radars like that, though. I'd kind of doubt that.
No,
but
I really doubt. I think that green glowing screen on the left might have been AI or something. It didn't even look real.
And then we can also see this ship on fire from a prior attack that they conducted, once again threatening that they'll do something. Oh, shiver me timbers. Like, oh, that's scary. But it does appear that right now a lot of Iranian proxy forces are beginning to rear their heads and are pretty much trying to make it clear that if the U.S. attacks Iran, the U.S. is going to have to go through them, which is going to be pretty easy. I mean, you know, it's not like they're like an actual armed force or anything. I mean, going through them is quite easy. I mean, hell, going through their concrete bunkers is pretty easy. Have y'all seen the mops? I mean, those things go through like about 200 feet of ground. I mean, you know, if you really wanted to get these guys, they're not safe anywhere. But beyond that, though, a lot of people are wondering, are the Iranians going to activate all their proxy forces if the U.S. strikes them? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so it looks like 48% of the audience said Iran will activate all their proxy forces in the event of an attack on their country, while 25% said Iran's proxies are basically extinct already and there's really no response they can mount. And 22% said the proxies will likely mount a limited response, but it won't be anything devastating or anything highly concerning. So I think that Iran will activate its proxies, but the catch is this though. The proxies have been beat down really, really badly. Like they've really gotten beat down a lot by Israel and the U.S. forces. Like, for example, the IDF today went into southern Lebanon and basically dropped an inferno on Hezbollah. Like, they absolutely incinerated a whole bunch of Hezbollah outposts inside of Lebanon. So, I mean, they're around still, yes. The proxies have not gone away, but I think most of it's a lot of hot air for the most part. They will try to launch cheap rockets like they did the last time that the Israelis and the Iranians got into a fight, but it won't be anything like wild. They're not going to start invading people. It's not going to be things like that. So it will be something. It'll be limited, in my opinion. I'm with the 22%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm not going to lie, man. The Houthis and Hezbollah and all the other groups, they talk a whole lot of talk, but then whenever U.S. airstrikes come around, they start looking a lot like that, you know?
Man, well, you saw those strikes on southern Lebanon today. Like, those strikes were huge. Like,
Oh, yeah.
the whole place was lit up orange. Like, they literally dropped an inferno on Hezbollah's head.
Yeah, they definitely did. I mean, like, the thing, folks, about these proxy groups is that they talk a whole lot of talk, and generally they will conduct some attacks against Israel and kind of follow through with that talk if it's directed only at Israel. But once they start to threaten the United States and we start bombing Iran, they did nothing to us during the Midnight Hammer operation of last year. They literally went completely silent after that happened, and there were no attacks conducted against U.S. forces anywhere in the region. The only thing that was done was a token attack by the Iranians when they fired a couple of missiles at Al Adid, and apparently that was already pre-telegraphed to the United States that they were going to be doing that. So I would say there is no real risk that they're going to be doing anything in support of Iran, because the truth of the matter is that if they do something like that, they're begging for complete destruction. And a lot of them might be scared that we might actually know where they are and we might actually be able to take them out. And you have to remember, folks, that at the end of the day, the standing rule about every radical Islamic group that the Iranians fund and support, including themselves, is that any one of their leaders always talks about everyone dying for the cause, but when it comes to them dying for the cause, they go running for the hills within the first minute. So a lot of them don't want to be that guy who dies for the cause, because while they yap that all the time, nobody actually wants to die for the cause. That's the truth of it. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, because I think that the chances of them actually being able to rear their heads would be pretty small. So I'd be able to 22%. I have a feeling it'd probably be a largely limited response. But moving on from that, we can see that the U.S. response is going to be large at a minimum. We did get to hear that the Air Force is going to be beginning major exercises, a multi-day readiness exercise across the Middle East to demonstrate the ability to deploy, disperse, and sustain combat air power in the region. This is to get the Iranians hyped up and freaked out so that they'll be on a constant state of high alert over the course of this week, and that'll start to wear them down, because a lot of these soldiers are going to be spending incredibly long hours at a high level of anxiety, which will become exhausting, and then they'll start to wear themselves down, so that way when the stock market closes, God bless the shareholders, this upcoming weekend, we can then start getting them. So we've also been able to hear that the Secretary of State apparently made a statement to the Prime Minister of Iraq. This picture makes the Secretary of State look like all these multiple jobs and hats that he's wearing is really getting to him these days. But apparently he stated that a government controlled by Iran cannot have put Iraq's interests first. So it appears that they're trying to get the Iraqis on board with what's coming around here in the future. We've also seen that within Jordan, U.S. air defenses have been properly set in place. This is a placeholder picture for the larger part, but we do understand that the United States ground air defense forces have been set up adequately to be able to operate a successful air defense at the moment, even if the Iranians conduct a preemptive attack, largely meaning that we are ready right now to be able to conduct strikes in Iran at any moment, which will most likely be coming up this next weekend. We've also heard that the Israelis made statements to civilian airlines to be careful and exercise caution. According to Shmuel Zakai, the Director General of the Israeli Civil Aviation Authority, he sent a letter Sunday to several international airlines, warning that this weekend was the beginning of a more sensitive period. This is a time when everyone gathers around and talks about their feelings, is what he meant, stating that air defense systems remain fully deployed at high readiness and that Israeli airspace could be closed at a moment's notice like it was during the 12-day war. So the Israelis are already making, once again, even farther war preparations at the moment. We have also been able to see that more flights of US C-17s, KC-135s, and KC-36s were being conducted into the area today, showing that significant amounts of equipment and supporting personnel are being brought into the area to prepare for these strikes. We've also been able to see in further U.S. military activity that there are a large grouping of aircraft available within EUCOM's AOR and also CENTCOM's AOR. This is a rough breakdown that was given by Defense Geek about what in the world is inside of CENTCOM and EUCOM, and as you can see, it is a fairly large amount. Just to get you all through a couple of the larger ones, at least in terms of actual multi-role capabilities, there's 35 F-15Es and 54 F-35As at RAF Lakenheath, which could be transferred to CENTCOM overnight. We also know that there are 37 F-15Es at the Muwafaq Air Base currently, along with 24 A-10 Thunderbolts. Those are the ones used against the ISIS forces in Syria. We also understand that elsewhere, we have seen that inside of Qatar, there are about 24 Eurofighter Typhoons of the Qataris, and there's also 36 F-15QAs and 31 Dassault Rafalas, all of those operated by the Qatari Air Force out of Al Udeid. We also know that there is about 59 Mirage 2000s of the Emirati Air Force, and also another 76 F-16Es and Fs of the UAE's Air Force as well. Then we also have to go over the aircraft that are present at various bases inside of Israel. There's about 173 F-16s, 66 F-15s. These are from the Israeli Air Force, mind you all, along with 48 F-35Is. And then on the carrier strike group, the USS Abraham Lincoln, there's about 7 Growlers, about 30 to 36 Super Hornets, 10 to 12 Lightning IIs, 4 to 5 Hawkeyes, which are the AWACS aircraft for the Navy, about 3 Ospreys, and then about 19 to 22 Seahawks. So it's a fairly decent grouping within the area, and a lot of what's in EUCOM right now can be transferred within several hours directly into CENTCOM's AOR, meaning that they're basically on call at the moment and can be moved into support operations within the region. So it is quite a large massing of troops and aircraft for that matter, and we are believing that airstrikes will probably be coming this upcoming weekend. But with all that in mind, we can say that at a minimum, a lot's going on down here, that's for sure. And additionally, we have also seen that the Israelis have been working hard on Hezbollah today. We got to see that they were conducting some juicy airstrikes in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah forces.
I'll tell you what, they got the skies of Lebanon lighting up orange out here. Look at this. They only know big bombs. Like Israel doesn't know little ones. It's only the big ones.
You know, there's 2 things I like. Burger King and 2,000-pound bombs. And we only buy 2,000-pound bombs. But I mean, the fireworks were impressive.
That's some fireworks and a half, I tell you. That's mortars.
Also, we got footage published by the Israeli Air Force, also showing us what exactly was hit inside of southern Lebanon. See, that's a 2,000-pound bomb right there. That's like not even a question.
That's serious business.
Man, that's serious business. Oh, get it? Ah,
man,
pun intended.
It's all about Syria.
Oh, man. Down with Hamas. But anyways, with that is the end of that clip right there in southern Lebanon, and that is generally our developing situation within the Middle East over the course of the day. That now moves us on, folks, into one last little bit of news that pertains to the Middle East, but it came out of the area of the North Atlantic. The U.S. is sending a special little plane for a special little boy, Khamenei, over into the Middle East, which is the EA-37B, pictured in this very cheap CGI-made picture right here. Let me go get y'all a better picture of an EA-37B here on air. So here we go. This is a little rare aircraft right here. Little itty-bitty buddy. I believe it's built off of Gulfstream, if I'm not mistaken. And let me see. Oh yeah, it was a Gulfstream G550. Look at that. This is what it looked like before.
Yeah, that's a big boy jet right there. That's a nice one.
Oh yeah, these are nice. And then the Army bulked it up with a little bit of extra feed. But these are incredibly interesting because these are our pinnacle of electronic warfare. It is able to disrupt radars, communications, and command and control systems. It is also able to completely fry electronic systems, a lot like the Growlers on board a carrier strike group. So these things are on the way. They are going to be getting out, well, at least one of them is going to be getting on out there and getting on down to business. So we'll be excited to see that. And at the moment, let's see if we can find... Oh, look, there's a bombardier of the German Air Force right now, but can we find that little... I'll say turn his transponder off.
It's already landed at Ramstein, I'm sure already. That was like 11 hours ago. They said it was on its way to Ramstein. It's probably on the way to the Middle East at this point, or it's already there.
Yeah. Oh, look, we have a Janet Airlines Clipper getting close to Akatori at the moment, so that's a little interesting.
Oh, wow. Also, by the way, there was a whole bunch of Strato tankers heading down to Qatar a moment ago. A lot of them have turned off their transponders, but there's a couple that's still on the radar right here.
Yeah, but you look at that right there. Oh, look, that's a Lucian 76 of the Egyptian Air Force that took off out of Dubai a little while ago. That's a little interesting. And anything else? Oh, here's a MC. Ooh, an MC-130J. Now that's a little interesting. Let me go pull that one up for y'all really quickly and get y'all a picture of that. Here we go. Let me go get this for y'all. This one's an interesting one. These MC-130Js are made for a special little mission. They're actually made to conduct in-air refueling with some aircraft, primarily helicopters, a lot like those in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment of the U.S. Army. That's a little bit interesting. I mean, that's very interesting, as a matter of fact, to see. It's not really used to refuel normal multi-role aircraft. This is usually used to refuel helicopters and incredibly slow-speed aircraft, so that's fairly interesting. And we also have an MQ-4 Trident just doing its normal surveillance patterns in the Persian Gulf at the moment, so nothing exceptional there. Also, what do we have coming out of the States at the moment? We have even more C-17s conducting airlifts, and generally U.S. airspace is incredibly quiet tonight. There's basically no activity anywhere except for what appears to be, the Civil Air Patrol over most parts of the country, and also a Pegasus that's taken off out of San Francisco. And
Also, I'd imagine that most of the South probably doesn't have any aircraft taking off because largely I think that storm's still causing a problem a little bit. So that's probably why you're not seeing much.
Maybe, might be, that's possible. But we'll have to see. But nevertheless, that's our airspace situation at the moment. And, of course, we will be continuing to observe the situation and report on it as it develops. But with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the Middle East and into the greater news at large out of Eastern Europe, as we did get a significant amount of information out of the war in Ukraine today. But before we get on into that, though, I haven't been able to see this tonight, folks, because due to a little issue that I have with my second monitor, I can't run a live stream over there, otherwise the monitor just shuts itself off. I've tried everything to fix that, folks. The monitor is basically at the end of its life, and I'm trying to keep stretching its lifespan out as long as possible. But outside of that, Matthew, how well has that fundraiser been doing for none other than Razum for Ukraine, and who are our top donors for that fundraiser tonight?
All right, so our fundraiser is doing pretty damn good tonight. It's already at $1,424 raised right now.
Dang.
We're roughly about $1,000 to the goal tonight. So we are doing fantastic and making very good progress right here. So if you can, donate to the fundraiser. It does help the cause, and we appreciate y'all being generous with the fundraiser tonight, which is Razum for Ukraine. But to name off some of our top donors so far, we have had a $100 donation from Hal Rose, the largest of the night, and a huge shout out to Hal for that massive donation. Also, by the way, huge shout out to Old Warrior Fella for the 65, as well as Mike Yunt for a 50, and then Samuel Szymanski for a 50 as well. Then we had Ella MC Wills Naffa that threw in a 50, along with Greg Carrier, who also threw in a 50. But a huge shout out to all of our top donors tonight, and also a huge shout out to everybody else that we were not able to call off, because once again, it's all those donations that add up to help us get to the goal amount each and every Sunday night. So we appreciate you all very much. And also, if you threw in an anonymous donation, sadly we don't know who you are, but I've seen a lot of those tonight. A huge shout out to everybody that didn't even want the recognition. A huge shout out to them as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a massive shout out to each and every single one of y'all, because we're getting really close to being $1,000 away from the fundraiser goal. And there is nothing as great as the Sunday night fundraisers here on this channel. We have been running Sunday night fundraisers on this channel for the entirety of about 4 years, pretty much every single Sunday, raising funds for nonprofits that help out in areas of the world that we cover on the news. Most of the time, that's Ukraine. And the support is greatly appreciated by the folks over there because these nonprofits are able to help people to get away from the front lines and try and escape the brutality of the war and the fact that the Russians will probably end up harming or killing these people, and are able to help them to have another life elsewhere. And not only that, Razum for Ukraine does a great deal of work elsewhere around Ukraine, generally helping these people to keep on working with their lives and also to be able to try and help out with the war effort generally and focus Ukraine's governmental efforts on actually fighting the war instead of tying up resources on the humanitarian side of things, which nonprofits like Razum for Ukraine are able to help out with tremendously. And so I get to thank y'all massively because not only are y'all helping to save lives, y'all are helping the Ukrainian government to free up its hands from the humanitarian situation and focus as much as they possibly can on fighting and eventually ending this war, which has battered the eastern side of Ukraine for about 4 years at this point. Humongous thanks to everyone that we called out, the top donors. Y'all are absolutely incredible, and we thank y'all massively for helping the fundraiser to get to where it is right now. And to all of the people that we weren't able to call out who threw in less than $50, a massive thanks to all of y'all as well. We know that a lot of y'all give as much as y'all can give, and while we can't call out everyone, I want everyone to know that we are wildly appreciative of y'all's support, because if it wasn't for each and every one of y'all, no matter if it's $1 or hundreds of dollars, each and every single one of y'all added together makes the fundraiser total what it is. And without all of the people who threw in less than 50, half of the fundraiser amount that's been raised so far wouldn't have been raised tonight. So humongous thanks to everyone who's helping out these fundraisers. And in honor of that, let's get a couple of questions from the chat, Matthew. What do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first live chat question of the night. This one goes to none other than Water Barley, who said, what ships are part of the Abe Lincoln Carrier Strike Group?
Oh, that's a good question. It would be the USS Abraham Lincoln. Let me actually go and get the one from Ian Ellis. Ian Ellis makes wildly good infographics. So, right now, in the Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, which I believe is Carrier Strike Group 3, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, it's the USS Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, it is Carrier Strike Group 3. There we go. Yeah, I got that right. Man, like a pop quiz sort of thing. Also, the USS Frank E. Peterson Jr., the USS Spruance, and the USS Michael Murphy. So right now, it's the Nimitz-class Abraham Lincoln, and also 3 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. So that's currently what makes up the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group at the moment. It's actually kind of lean, like, to be entirely honest. Usually, Carrier Strike Groups have about 3 destroyers and a cruiser. Dang, Nicholas Condor just threw in a 500. Holy moly!
That's crazy work right there. That's the largest one of the night, by the way, from Nicholas Condor. We're just about, I think, $200 shy of the goal at this point. That's fantastic.
Holy moly! We're about to hit it. We're going to hit it in the middle of the question segment. This is unbelievable. A humongous shout out to Nicholas Condor. You have gotten it up far, and that is the largest support to the fundraiser tonight, and we are absolutely amazed to see it. Absolutely incredible stuff right there. Incredible stuff. And so with that, I hope that does answer your question well about this Carrier Strike Group, and I also hope that that lets you know a little bit more about our force disposition within the area of CENTCOM's area of responsibility. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
Breaking news! Breaking news!
Huh?
Breaking news!
What?
We're almost to the goal right now. It's creeping up there so fast. It's about $150 away from the goal right now. We are getting so close to hitting that goal. I must admit, that's a good look right there. I must say, I like how that's looking. That goal is looking awfully juicy. And I think it's about to get hit in just a minute. But anyways, though, getting into our second live chat question, this one goes to Warlord, who said, what do you think is the chances that this is a mixture of real and fake information coming out of China?
I would say that the chances of that is most likely slim, actually. And some people want to say that it's a deception by the Chinese, but a lot of people don't really understand. Deception is supposed to make you look better. It's not supposed to make you look worse. Like, that's not the way deception actually works. Like, in a war, it's very rare for a country to go, oh, we're really weak right now, and we could get a, real ham slamming, and that would be it. Because basically you're encouraging someone to give you a ham slamming. I mean, it's like, if they aren't giving you one yet, they're about to give you one. So generally, deception is used to make you look far stronger than you would want to be, because looking strong is a deterrent. Looking weak is inviting trouble. And so making the statement that they made today, it is very damning for China's general disposition in the world. And did we just hit the goal?
No, not yet. We got $40 to go.
Oh, Richard, you faked me out right there. I was like, goal? I was like, oh, did we hit it? But generally, this makes China look bad. This makes China look incredibly weak. Like, anyone could come up to anyone in the Chinese government and ask them, hey, how do those nukes work? And they'll go, oh, sit down, I'll tell you. Like, it's not a good look for them at all. And I have a feeling that this is probably accurate information. And I also think that this is trying to put the United States out there as well to try and embarrass us and make it look like they just exposed our spy ring. But if anything, it's making China look exceptionally weak at the moment, which if China looks this weak, folks, here's another thing. This is going to make the invasion of Taiwan a lot more difficult because the U.S. will be able to say, well, I mean, you know, their command is so corrupt. Oh, goal! We hit the goal! Breaking news! Breaking news!
Igor, goal. Man, we've hit the goal. That is fantastic to see that right there. Well, I almost nearly died at the end of that, but we are doing damn good right there. That'd been a good note to go out on. At the end of the goal, I'll tell you what, look at that. It's going crazy, too. It's like well above the goal at this point. Look at that.
Dang! It's getting on up there. And I got to say, a humongous shout out to everyone once again for getting that fundraising goal. It's really something crazy, folks. I love to see it. I know everyone in the LSA loves to see it because the Leaf Spring Army has never missed a fundraising goal in the entire history of this channel. A humongous shout out to all of y'all so much once again, and it's a great thing to know that we are continuing to help out the folks that we cover the news on every single day. And so, a humongous thanks to everyone who supported this fundraiser, both big donations and small ones. And getting back to the answer here to that live chat question, I would have to once again say, I just don't really think that there's any falsehoods about them selling nuclear secrets to the United States, because it just doesn't paint China in a positive light, and that's something that will generally weaken their foreign policy position, because a lot of people will take them either as a military joke due to their corruption and incompetence, or they will start to believe that anyone in China can be bought, which may even open up and invite further intelligence agencies from other countries to try and see and poke around the Chinese military and see if they can get any more vital intelligence out of them. So I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. But I think that the information coming out of China is generally accurate, just because of how damning it is for China and how bad it makes them look. And also, by the way, some people are going to be like, but sometimes countries make themselves look bad. No. Countries only make themselves look bad if they cannot avoid it, if they think they can avoid it. Most countries try and make themselves look good. Some of them will even lie about how things are going to make themselves look good. You know, like, for example, in Iran, when, you know, they shoot a whole bunch of people in the streets, they try and greatly reduce the number to make it look like it wasn't that bad, and to also make it sound like there wasn't that many protesters, when in reality there was a lot of them, and they killed a lot of them. In Russia, they sit there and fib everything every day of the week. Russia never goes out and goes, oh, we're so weak, we're feeble. They always come out every day and go, we're strong, our economy is great, our military is getting stronger by the day. Because making yourself look weak does not do anyone any favors. It never does. And so it would be against the grain for China to come out and go, oh, we're very weak, and our top guy was selling secrets to China, well, to the United States, because it just looks horrendous. I mean, it looks horrendous for them, and a lot of people are going to go, well, hell, that was a horrendous thing that happened in China. I mean, we might be able to take advantage of a situation like that. But anyways, with that, it's time for us, folks, to move on and into the last question of this segment, and then we're getting on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so the last one of this segment goes to none other than Patrick. He said, can it also be easy to the U.S. to simply drop some money in the account of that general simply to put him on the spot?
Not really. The guy was probably caught actually transferring secrets to the United States, or whoever was gathering the secrets from him was caught and then ratted on him, because that's also possible. There's many ways that he could have been caught, but it doesn't always have to pertain to money. Like, every single time this happens, someone isn't being bribed. Sometimes they're just disillusioned.
I think most times it's about money. I would say probably, just taking a wild guess, I'd imagine 90% of the times people do something like this, it's most likely about money. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I mean, there's a decent amount of historical examples where people just get disillusioned and then they flip. Like, there was a very famous British double agent that was working in MI6, but was also working on sharing British secrets with the Soviet Union. And then the British said, "There's a mole in our organization." Harold, who was the guy who was the double agent, you'll be in charge of finding the double agent. So for the next, I think it was like 15 years, the mole was the one trying to find the mole. Like, he was the one designated to find the guy.
Man, mole on mole violence.
Man, I tell you, man, it's tough stuff.
Those moles, I tell you, those moles.
But I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that people flip. Usually it is for money, but the other half of it is usually that they become disillusioned and then they flip for that reason as well. So I would say that it could have been either, but I have a feeling that with this situation, considering that money really couldn't buy you anything, that the vice chairman position couldn't. I think the guy might have just ended up being disillusioned. He probably was a part of the group, he highly likely was a part of the group that is going against Xi Jinping, and because he's become so disillusioned with how the PLA is being run by Xi, and also how the Chinese Communist Party is basically being whipped into submission by Xi, he might become disillusioned enough to just tell the United States anything they wanted to know. That also is highly likely. I feel like that is the most likely option.
Maybe so. Also, I see some people bringing up a good point, a good question here. Some people are saying, well, why would the guy be so desperate for money? Because he has a very high position. So naturally, he would make good money. But actually, he does not make good money, actually. The generals in China are actually very poorly paid. For example, the Chinese equivalent of a U.S. brigadier general, which I believe is an 07, I believe, they would earn approximately 264,000 yen, which is about 42,000 U.S. dollars. So that's not very good pay for a general. Like, even in China, that's not good pay for a general. So, that might be why he might be motivated to do it for money, because obviously he wants to get wealthy. I mean, everybody wants to get wealthy eventually. So that could be a motivation for it. And also, if he's gotten angry with Xi, that might give him the mental permission to follow through with doing something like that. So that could explain it. But if he was offered like millions or something, that's a lot of money for somebody making 42,000 a year.
I would say, let me go pull this up. Pay for vice chairman, let's see, of the Chinese Central Military Commission. Let's see here. But here's the thing, though. China declares that the official salary for the president of China, which is Xi Jinping, is just 22,000 US dollars a year. So I'm kind of doubting that. Like, I'm kind of doubting the pay grades that they're putting out there to the public, because I think they're trying to make them look humble as thou, but, they're definitely raking in the dough. I mean, Xi wants for nothing, and he's certainly not wanting for nothing on a $22,000 annual salary as the president of China,
No, they get all the perks, like our military. Like, you get housing, you get subsidized food, you get all kinds of stuff like that. So I mean, it comes with a lot of perks with it. But I mean, still though, it's not like they're not becoming millionaires or something like that. And maybe Xi might have like his personal piggy bank, kind of like Putin has his own personal piggy bank that's sort of the government. But the normal generals though, they don't.
Well, I mean, I would say that's a little bit tough, because Russian generals also get paid basically nothing according to their official pay grade. But have you ever seen a Russian official look like they're poor? No, because they're involved in huge amounts of bribery, corruption, and scams to be able to make loads of money on the side. And China's military operates very similarly to Russia's in the level of corruption that permeates the system. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, it was just a few years ago that it came out, and this was one that was leaked out of China. It wasn't publicly announced by China's foreign ministry, that some generals within one theater command had actually siphoned the solid rocket propellant out of a missile and replaced it with water to be able to sell off the solid propellant for cash. And apparently it involved a whole bunch of strategic rocket force units that were doing that to try and turn a buck. So I would have to say it's not really out of the question that the guy was wildly wealthy. It wouldn't really make any sense for a country that's built on corruption, bribery, and scams like China and any other authoritarian system to have generals that are basically dirt poor and living in shanty shacks, because then that means they would be easily bought off by someone else, like the United States.
Maybe. Possibly so, but for example, like Xi Jinping, like Xi is not anywhere near as wealthy as Putin. Like, Putin basically uses the entire Russian government's treasury as his personal bank account. So Putin is ungodly wealthy, like he is, because he just takes the money out of the government. Xi Jinping, though, I think the estimates are he has potentially about $1 billion worth of real estate and maybe liquid assets. That's the rumors that Xi Jinping has. But I mean, $1 billion for somebody like the leader of China, that's not a whole lot considering that he's literally the leader of the second like strongest economy in the world, or at least on paper it is. That's not very much. It's just because the system in China doesn't promote that. Like, it's not about being flashy and stuff like that. So I don't think that's as severe as it would be in Russia, at least in China. So I think the numbers might actually be somewhat accurate, actually.
I don't know, man, because on a $22,000 annual salary, and he's only been the president of China for a little over 10 years at this point. I mean, it's pretty hard to go from $22,000 a year to being worth $1 billion. You know, there's a lot of corruption involved in getting that kind of net worth on a $22,000 salary. I mean, hell, there's a lot of people in the Congress here in the United States that are on something like what, $110,000 salary, and they're worth millions. And, you know, the United States is a country that generally roots out corruption far more efficiently than most other, well, pretty much any authoritarian state out there. So I would say these generals are definitely raking in dough on the side. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense for them not to be, because everyone below them in rank is as well. So I would say that he was probably well off and wanted for nothing, and he probably just became disillusioned enough that he flipped and informed key secrets to the United States.
I don't know. I'm looking at the most recent U.S. intelligence report on Xi's wealth, and it appears to be, if this article is correct, it appears to be that U.S. intel believes that Xi holds about $1 billion in hidden wealth through family. So I think that might actually be accurate. I don't think that Xi has a whole bunch, because you got to remember, like, when you see Xi Jinping out in public, well, like when he comes out into the public's eye, he's usually in the state-sponsored Hunqi, the vehicle that the state gives him as the leader of China, which is a state like communist-sponsored vehicle. So he doesn't have like Ferraris and Lambos and stuff sitting around. It's not like that in China. There's no like very big pressure to do that in that country. There's people that want to get there, but it's not really like the main thing. America's totally different with that. Like, everybody wants to be seen in the flashiest cars, the flashiest everything. China, not so much, but I think he does have about $1 billion in hidden wealth.
Well, yeah, but that's because of the communist system. Like, you can't look like you're bourgeoisie in a governmental system that talks about the proletariat endlessly. Like, you can't do that. I mean, that's not to say that he lives a poor life. He just puts on a presentation like he's poor, because otherwise he wouldn't be living up to the key communist tenets that they tell the entire public that they have to live by, that you can't consume too much, you can't be entirely possessed with material wealth or the idea of material wealth, because the communist goals are far more important than that. Like, you can't do that and then come rolling out in a Rolls Royce, because you're basically literally spitting in the face of the whole ideology at that point. So you have to look like that. But that doesn't mean that he lives some sort of austere life behind the scenes. Kim Jong-un doesn't either, and he runs a Juche nation that also runs off of communist ideology.
You know, the Hunqi is actually like the Chinese version of a Rolls Royce, is what that is. So it's like, it's flashy for China, but it's not owned by Xi. It's owned by the state. At least that in theory it is. So I think that Xi, he probably lives like a mega church pastor, like they do in the United States. Everything's in the name of the church, but in Xi's case, it's in the name of the state. So he gets to enjoy the jets, he gets to enjoy the houses, but it's technically owned by the state. Unlike the way it works in Russia, where Putin personally owns his houses and stuff like that. It's been basically funded by the taxpayer inside of Russia. I just don't think that China does it quite on that level. I don't think they do. Also, you have to remember too, the military budget in China, which is what they pay the generals out of, that military budget is not too large, like for a country of that size. Like, the military budget is somewhat tame especially compared to the United States. So I just don't think they'd have enough to pay these exorbitant salaries or even do the things you're talking about with that.
Well, yeah, but Russia has an even smaller military budget, and yet all of their generals live in 10,000 square foot mansions with Rolls Royces, Ferraris, Bugattis, and everything else. And Russia, before the war in Ukraine, had a $55 billion military budget, and yet their generals were bleeding the system dry. China has a $275 billion budget, and you're saying that they can't do that with, let's see, what would that be, 5 times more in size of a military budget?
Possibly. So, also, by the way, I was quickly looking here. Someone said, look at how Xi's daughter's living. That'll give you a clue. I pulled up Xi's daughter. I'll be honest, I didn't even know he had a daughter. And it appears to be she's in the United States, based on what I'm reading here. So, that's interesting. Studied psychology at Harvard. I didn't know any of this. This is news to me. I'm not really sure. I'll have to do some looking into this, though, but I'd imagine like you could see what type of car she's probably driving and things like that and get a clue about what's going on with that. But interesting. I didn't even know he had a daughter here in America.
Yeah, I didn't even know that either. But I generally say I think I think most people would agree, Chinese generals are not like incorruptible pillars of society that are poor. Like they're definitely bleeding the system, because corruption in the Chinese military is fairly commonly known, and that was also the guise that Xi Jinping used to conduct the beginning of the anti-corruption campaign starting in 2016, because of the wildly prevalent corruption that was already publicly known in China and the rest of the world to be incredibly prevalent, and then was used as a guise to be able to root out anyone who was against his control. Because in Russia, they say they have an anti-corruption campaign ongoing as well that also started in 2016 under Putin's leadership. Yet, if you look at any Russian general, I mean, they're clearly bleeding a system dry. They're basically bleeding a beat dry, because most of them live in incredibly luxurious mansions with wildly nice cars. They live incredibly good lives compared to anyone else in the country, even with the wildly small military budget that Russia had pre-war. So I would generally say that's probably highly likely in China. And so I think the guy probably flipped because he was disillusioned more so than looking for money.
Possibly so. I would still lean toward the idea it's probably money. That's just typically why people flip these days, but possibly disillusion. Heck, I think the disillusionment might have given him permission to go for the money, but I think ultimately, though, he's like, he wants that cash, probably.
Maybe he's going for that bag. But I can tell you this, he ain't seeing Tahiti anytime soon. That's for sure.
Man, I was just talking about that last night. I was saying, he could have had a good life in Tahiti. Honestly, though, good on him. I mean, if he gave something to the United States that's useful against our enemy, which is China, yeah, good on him for doing it. Maybe other Chinese generals want to do the same thing someday. So the catch is, though, you got to not get caught. That's the downside. Like this guy got caught. If he did it truthfully, then he got caught. So you got to avoid that. You got to be a little bit more low key about it.
I gotta tell you, rough stuff right there. But anyways, moving on from that, we're now going to be moving on out of our question segment, as a matter of fact, and into the rest of our news. We have been able to hear, folks, that the captain of the Grinch has been arrested. So basically the ship's about to get seized. That's basically what this is telling us. France has put the Indian captains of suspected Russian shadow tanker the Grinch in custody, according to the prosecutors in France. So at this moment, it does appear that the captain is mostly being indicted in France with charges of sanctions evasion. And that also means that the ship will be officially seized and most likely announced here within the very near future. Additionally, we have also been able to hear, moving us on over into Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, of some very interesting developments here as well. Let's take a little look, shall we? First off, in Stavropol, we were able to hear the Ukrainian drones skittering on over the city. Let's take a little listen. That sounds like... Man, that sounds like it was flying towards Dagestan. Send to Dagestan 3 years and forget. That's what also we were able to see in the Slaviansk na Kubani, that the city was hit by drone attack. Very sad. Listen to that air defense. Oh, and there's the hit.
Oh,
man, you did that just like Paulie, man. How much
watch
more,
what you're saying.
How much more betrayal can I take? Did you hear that joke about Jenny Sack? Did you hear that joke about Jenny Sack? What, you got Tourette system? But anyways, moving on from the attack in Sloviansk na Kubani, it appears that they tried to hit the refinery in the southern side of the city once again. We don't really know what happened around Stavropol. We heard the drones fly over, but we weren't able to confirm any impacts in the area or even any air defense fire. So we're still trying to figure out more information on that one. Meanwhile, we also were able to hear up in Moscow today some very interesting statements from our boy Medvedev. Let's take a little listen. Medvedev said a Ukrainian drone attack on Putin's residence could have triggered a response involving special weapons. Wow.
What's up with this guy? What's he got, like a nuclear fetish or something like that? Why does he keep bringing this up over and over? It's like also he's basically like saying, oh, Russia's going to get destroyed too. It's like if you launch a nuke or something or do something crazy, the odds of a nuclear exchange goes through the roof. So, I guess he's like advocating for the destruction of his own country at that point.
Man, Medvedev wakes up every day and he goes, yes, I yearn for sweet release. It's like, bro, it's like you need to calm down.
And he says he gets excited about the idea of a nuclear hellfire. He doesn't get scared by it. He gets excited.
Bro, dude, he doesn't live in fear of a nuclear apocalypse. He reminisces on the idea of a nuclear apocalypse. I feel like folks, Medvedev might actually be part roach, and that's why he's not scared of a nuclear exchange, is because if one happens, he'll just survive it. it, because the way this guy begs for it at this point, it's very interesting to me. But while he's begging for that, Russia has just lost Venezuela as an ally. They're about to lose Iran, most likely. This is leaving Russia with fewer and fewer friends around the world. And a lot of people are wondering, how's that going to affect the situation in Europe? And Matthew, how's this going to affect the situation in Europe, according to the folks? And what do you think?
Okay, so now that Russia's losing allies left and right, they've already lost Venezuela. They're about to lose Iran as well once the U.S. gets done, ravaging the place if they actually do it. So how is this going to affect the Ukraine war? 41% said Russia will end up getting more risky and escalatory because they get panicked, while 30% said it largely will not have an effect. And 21% said Russia will scale down and scale back and slow down. Stand back and stand by. But I think personally that Russia will likely get more risky and escalatory because usually when Russia realize it's on the losing end of the stick, they usually don't calm down. They usually go berserk. That's usually the logic in Russia, is to escalate before they start de-escalating. So it'll probably be more escalation. That's my guess. And that's probably the way it's going to go. It's really wild, though. Iran was probably one of Russia's biggest allies next to China, and they're about to lose that ally potentially. So they've licensed built the Shaheds, but they still need parts, and they also still need other components from Iran to boost their capacity to produce these weapons. And without that, they're going to fall behind in their weapons production. So, Enforcer, what say you?
And holy moly, Hal Rose just threw in a $333 donation.
Holy moly, Hal Rose, Hal, what the hell, man? That's crazy.
That's crazy right there. We thank you so much for supporting the fundraiser like that, Hal. And we know it's Hal, although it even says anonymous. We know it's Hal because he throws in the same donation every weekend. And we're always happy to see that Hal Rose continues to support the folks around the world through these nonprofits. But moving on from that, I would have to say that the Russia, I'd have to be with 29%. The Russia's probably not going to be affected by most of this. At least on the home front situation, they license produce most of their drones at this point. Hardly any of them actually come from Iran, and they just pay royalties to the Iranians for license producing them. And also, as far as Venezuela is concerned, it helped out the Russians economically like a tad, like a little minuscule amount, but not really a whole lot. So I have a feeling that at least for the war in Ukraine, these external situations won't really be affecting them too much. Now, if the Chinese saw that Xi Jinping was overthrown and a new Chinese government came into power that was more reconciliatory with America and looked at Russia as a country to be discarded, that would truly be devastating. But generally, that's not going to be happening. And Iran and Venezuela, even with how significant Iran was at the beginning of the war for arms support, it's dwindled a lot in that significance, especially with direct support and shipments to Russia. So I don't really think it'd be affecting them all that much. If anything, Russia might actually be happy to see the Iranian government collapse, because if they did, they might be able to stop the royalty payments on the Garan 2s that they produce inside of Russia, which would save them a good bit of money and help them to stretch the bank account just a little bit farther into the future. So that would be my opinion. I don't really think it'll have that much of an impact. But moving on from that, we are going to be getting on down into the war in Ukraine. We have very interesting news coming out of Ukraine today, folks. Moving us on down into the area and into our location unknowns, we were able to see this Russian Buhanka get obliterated. Take a gander. And then they all get out. Buona, They blurred out the middle of the screen so that you can't tell where they're at, if y'all cannot tell. Very, very smart move here. Oh, блядь, трудно! And they're trying to shoot it, блядь. But no matter how hard they try, they suck at aiming. Oh, here it comes. And there it goes. Oh, call that the Reese's Pieces, bleed. Let me show you. That thing got cooked up like a s'more.
It's in a million pieces. What's all that? What's that like? What, rolls of toilet paper? Like boxes? What is that?
It's like insulation and supplies from inside the Buhanka that just got blasted out in the explosion.
Oh man. Like a freaking Mario Kart loot box just got busted out right here.
Bro, you can even see the back bumper just sitting over here, like, mostly intact on the side of the road. Oh,
ding, 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 ding.
Oh, man. You know, I always gotta say, folks, it's hilarious. Like, let's just watch this part of the clip again.
Jeez.
And then they turn around and the van is pieces.
It's a Mario.
Cancel it! Oh, my Lord.
Don't panic now. It's too late. It's already been hit. He's going to start panicking after the fact.
Bro, dude, he's panicking because he just realized that his free ride out of the front is gone. He said, he's like, oh no! But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see, folks, something that's exceptionally rare. We've never seen a Ukrainian Rodnik before. If y'all don't know, because we haven't had this segment in a minute, there is a segment that we have called the Rodnik section, and that section covers abominations that the Russians have produced to have vehicles to use on the front. Usually, back in the day, for about a couple of months, that was a wildly common segment because there would be endless pictures coming out of Russia of the absolutely abhorrent abominations that they would build that they would call cars. We got one from the Ukrainians today. This is the first one I've ever seen, and it's wild. It's a Puma armored fighting vehicle. Let me go pull up a Puma APC for y'all, or an AFV. Let me go get this for y'all. So, this is what it is, actually. This is what it looks like. But they have put the maximum amount of protection on this thing possible. I don't even think this thing is a Puma, to be upfront with y'all, because a Puma is tracked. They call this thing a Puma. I don't even know what's under this thing because it's wheeled.
It's a leopard.
Man, Def Leopard.
It's a tiger.
I have no clue what this thing is. It has a 50 BMG on it, a cope cage, some rubber slats, a beard, and some metal slabs on the side. I have no clue what this thing even is. It is definitely a Ukrainian Rodnik, because there's no other way to explain this thing, but it is quite bizarre looking, to say the least. I would have to say it's definitely not a Puma, though. That we can be sure of. But anyways, moving on from that, and out of that interesting Rodnik, it is time for us to move on into our casualty report. Let's take a gander, shall we? Oh, and Miss DC came.
Oh, zero Bobcats, though. They got none again. They've gone through another bit of a dry spell around here.
It does kind of seem like they're going through a little bit of a dry spell. And really quickly, I actually want to check something here. That says the 24th of January. Did they not? Hold up. Wait a minute. Ah, here we go, comrades. I'm so sorry, everyone. It was the wrong casualty report. I don't know how they got there, because I had this one earlier, and I looked at it, I was like, wait a minute. That's the 24th of January. Why in the world did the link become this one? I don't know what happened here, because it copied this link. Yeah, it copied that link exactly. That's bizarre. Anyways, with that, Miss DC Keeper of the Record said 847 drones is the 8th highest daily loss. Losses below averages, but January total will beat recent months in tank artillery, MLRS, and vehicles. Submarine total is 2 since December 16th. Typo again. And over the past 24 hours, we have been able to see that 1,020 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 1 APC, 115 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 32 artillery pieces, 847 drones, 1 MLRS, 15 cruise missiles, and 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems. All in all, not a bad day. Not a bad day at all. And we're always happy to see that the Ukrainians are holding their lines and continuing to inflict losses, not losses, on the Russian army. As the more losses that they inflict, the sooner this war will eventually end. At least that's the hope. Moving on from that and on up into Kupiansk, we also get to see the Ukrainians hitting the Russians up here in Kupiansk. Oh, look, a very rare Ural 4320. We're about to make them even rarer. The Russians went, bleh. Classic
Goes
Z's.
forward right into the minefield.
Man, they said, let's miss the flying bomb and drive into the sitting bombs. Oh, look.
Look at this. They had a little loadout. Oh, they had a little electronic warfare cooler back there.
Man, out of a Yeti cooler. Bro.
Man, that ain't no Yeti cooler.
Man, that's probably like a Beppy cooler or something like that. But
that's the Temu one.
Man, we can see them chasing this guy in the ATV through the woods. Oh, and he hopped off. Oh, he ditched the ATV. Oh, and the ATV flipped over. Oh, my goodness. And the Russians are going making a run for it, and they got the ATV anyways. And they're getting another one. Look at that. A close-in zoom up of it. And there we can see Reese's Pieces, as usual. Moving on out of the Kupiansk front and on down the line, we also were able to see down near the Touretsk area that Russian drones were being taken out in decent numbers. This was done by the 93rd Signum drone unit. Or as we call them, Sigma Male. Ha! What color is your Bugatti? And then they get their ass beat in the boxing ring.
Your Bugatti. What color is your Bugatti? Oh.
Bruh, top G became bottom G in that boxing ring that day.
I tell you what. Ain't all the excuses in the world about how you got that little smackdown in the ring.
You see, losing is the new winning. Like it's like, yeah, sure. Like, okay.
Oh man.
Man. Anyways, moving on down the front to Konstantinivka, we also got to see them hitting Russian forces down here in the 156th Mechanized Brigade. Man, look at them go. They're on the prowl, looking for him. Oh, what's that over there? Nothing, apparently.
Go-kart.
Oh, what's that on the left? Oh, little odds and ends of a car frame. Well, we're still on the prowl. Let's see. Anything interesting down this highway? Oh, I think I see a moving vehicle. I do! Get him! We can see the drone speeding up to go try and catch the car.
They got low batteries, so they got to make it quick. Oh, there he is. There he goes.
They got to land now, and they sure as hell are going to. And the Russians are bailing. Hubliat! And they got the UAZ. Look at that. And here comes another one.
The Russians have that horror movie effect going on. Whenever they see some danger coming their way, they're always tripping and falling, like every time.
Yeah, these guys are doing that too. It's like, why do they do that? Why? And we see this one. Oh, look, it's the Russian. Oh, and, well, I guess it just doesn't pay to invade another country. Anyways, in Touretsk, we also get to see some Russians getting ambushed by this FPV drone. This is a fiber optic FPV drone, by the way. It's waiting for its time to shine.
It's lurking.
He's lurking. Real lurker right here. We love the American lurker. Oh.
Do something.
Oh, there's a Russian right there. There they are. Enemy spotted. They're waiting to see if more will show up. Oh, and they did. Oh, they're on the way. The Russians like, oh, what is that? And then they found out.
Oh, my goodness.
And they said, is something in the wind? It's like, no, that's coming for you. It's like, that's not the wind. But we also got to see 23 kilometers behind the lines in Pokrovsk. The Northwestern was getting its catch a crab. I'm just kidding, by the way. The Ukrainians were knocking out D-20s by the score load. So here they are. Yes. The old classic D-20. Little stubby thing, honestly. The Ukrainians basically obliterate an entire Russian artillery battery today with drones. Nice to see it.
Look at them go.
Man, look at that. They got that Sklad VK up in here.
Sergeant Soggy said ambush FPVs are scary. They really are scary. It's like a landmine just sitting around, but the landmine's not stationary. Like, you can't really dodge it. The landmine just suddenly comes to life and starts like actively chasing you down. It's really horrifying.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of like a bouncing Betty, but it's got a brain and it can actually move around. You know, like how the bouncing Bettys used to pop up out of the ground and explode at like shoulder or neck level. That's basically what FPV drones are, but instead of them bouncing up in their stationary spot and exploding, they lift up and then fly at you and then explode. It's terrifying, honestly. But, you know, I guess that's even more reason that the Russians shouldn't be in Ukraine at the end of the day, you know? They wouldn't have to deal with any of this stuff. And nobody would be, you know, out there getting hurt right now on the front lines if the Russian army just simply wasn't there. It's a simple solution. But in Pokrovsk, we also get to see the Ukrainians landed some artillery on the Russians with the 148th Artillery Brigade. It's actually kind of rare, folks, to see artillery in use, at least on video footage. And we can see here that they are doing some pretty effective work.
Also, Enforcer Crow said, imagine the AI-powered ones. Hey, yeah, that's gonna be something else with those, because the ones currently are being operated by a human behind the controls. Imagine like a whole bunch of those things laying around, just waiting to take off, and then it's totally automated, like the whole thing's automated. That's gonna be horrifying.
Man, I'd have to say, man. You know, there's been a lot of bots tonight, folks. A lot of them, of all types. Like, I've seen such a variety tonight. I feel like we could open up, like, a Walmart equivalent superstore on bots in bot variety. Like, we could have an entire bot section in that store.
You know how we were having for a while. There was those bots coming in when we talked about the Iran news, saying, "Go watch this guy's channel. He knows what he's really talking about Iran." And they were talking about one channel. Now there's a Chinese channel that apparently that covers Chinese-based news. That the bots are coming in and doing the exact same thing on a Chinese-based channel. They're saying, "Go watch this person's channel. They know what's really happening in China." It's like why these things literally have the same script.
Yeah, it's like, and also it's like, that's great if you think that, but if you think that, don't watch the show, go watch theirs. Stop bothering us. It's like, and also you get banned when you do that, so it's not like it was winning for you or anyone else. It's rude to do that, like for those bots if they're real or not.
They're not even real.
They're not even
what
real.
Rude is.
They don't even know what rude is. They don't. That's why we ban them. And then there's been a whole line of bots with the same pre-programmed script. You have no idea what's going on in communist China. You need to listen to so-and-so's channel. It's like, no, I do know what's going on in communist China. I'm quite well read on that. And in college, I took 2 classes on it. I generally know what's going on in communist China. So I think I'm good. But moving on from that and down into Kotline, we also get to see the Russian Federation getting some hits down here from the 46th Brigade as well. Ooh! Toasting them up.
Dang.
You see them coming on down, getting this Russian who was trying to hide. He did not hide well enough. We see more Russians trying to hide. Many Russians try to hide, but they do not succeed because Santa Claus wore night vision goggles and come down chimney. But moving on from that and on down towards Novopavlivka, we also got to see another clip of the 46th Air Mobile Brigade, which was also striking the same targets. So we're going to be moving that one on up towards the area of Kotline because they're generally within the area of Novopavlivka and Kotline. So generally that marker up there serves to be accurate enough. Moving us all the way down and into Kherson, we also got to see them searching for the Russians in the Bolivar unit. This is a unit in Ukraine made up of Venezuelan volunteers. I guess these guys are not big fans of the Russians, so I guess they weren't big fans of the Maduro regime either.
Look at them go.
That was a civilian. They're actually hunting for Russians, so they skipped over that guy and went to find someone else. But moving on out of the area of Kherson, that is all of our news for the day, folks, shockingly enough. There, unfortunately, was no speech from Zelensky for today, so that means that we're going to be moving on to the second segment, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, is it going to be a great time. We have loads and loads of live chat questions that many people have asked and have yet to get answers for, and we want to make sure to answer those questions, because that's what we do around here. And I also have to say a huge thanks to everyone who has been watching so far tonight. We have had 114,000 people watch this show in 1 hour and 50 minutes. And we've had a peak viewership tonight of 18.3 thousand people. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of y'all enjoying this channel. And if y'all have enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe and make sure to stick around. We're about to be getting into an incredibly fun segment here where we get to talk about basically literally anything and everything that y'all want to talk about, as long as it isn't religion, politics, climate change, or global warming, or climate, well, actually, whether the A10 is relevant in modern combat or not. Climate change generally covers the whole global warming deal. So with that in mind, folks, let's get on into it. What do we got, Matthew? And also, do we have any more top donors?
Yes, we do. And we're currently sitting at $3,200 raised right now. That is swell. That is well above the goal right there. And a huge shout out to LSA for once again making that happen once again tonight. And also to shout out our top donors since the last time we shouted them out. We've actually had quite a few. We did have that 500 that came in from Nicholas Condor. And thank you very much, Nicholas, for one of the largest ones of the night. We also had that 333 from Hal Rose, as well as a 50 from Kevin, and then a 50 from Spark Slinger, as well as Yanara Sokofor, as well as Chef Danny B, Samuel Sizamonski, Grand Moff, and also a 40 from Old Texas Red. And a huge shout out to all of our remaining top donors of the night, and everybody else as well, for once again helping us to hit that fundraiser goal and to go well above it. The sky was the limit tonight, and it looks like the sky was not the limit. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, a humongous humongous thanks to everyone who has supported this fundraiser tonight, both big and small. Every single one of y'all have made this fundraiser a reality tonight and have helped us continue to help out the people that we cover the news on and y'all hear the news on every single night. And I gotta say that is truly impressive and incredible. And a massive shout out to everyone that makes the Lee Spring Army what it is. And so, I hope that does address that well. And with that, I just saw someone say that universities in America are CCP institutions. I can tell you that that's not the case. Like, I can tell you that we went to college, and while there are some people there who lean politically one way or the other, generally college, at least where we went to, was filled half and half with basically like people who were very opinionated in one way or the other, and they made it very clear about that. So I would say, nah, not really. So, with that, we're on into the question. So what do we got, Matthew?
Also, by the way, I saw Water Barley say, "How are you able to track the chat so thoroughly while keeping up with what Andrew's saying and also speaking on your own accord?" Honestly, like that's why I stutter sometimes. That's being perfectly honest. That's why I stutter, because I'm reading the chat, I'm banning the bots, I'm also putting stuff into our spreadsheet to cover later. Also, I'm responding to people, and I'm trying to think about the polls I'm also writing up, and then also answering the poll questions as well. So it's honestly a lot. That's why sometimes I start losing my train of thought like halfway through as I'm looking at like so many things at once. So it's a little bit challenging. I'll be honest, tonight the coffee is working good though, so generally I'm doing all right. But if it wasn't for coffee, I would be probably just babbling like crazy. I'd probably sound like a U.S. president. But anyways, jumping into our live chat questions here, our Morse code decoders of the night were Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mission Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garba, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush, Computeric Sire, and Brian Blairstown. And he said, the Morse for today said, China just had the biggest security blunder of the history thanks to this LLT LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that done on the nail. That was the jackpot of the night. I got to congratulate greatly the Signal Corps for getting that correct time and time again. Because if y'all didn't get that correct, we wouldn't be able to know what the Morse code message is. And it's truly profound, amazing, and incredible to know that folks like y'all know what Morse code is, how to decipher it, and how to put that out there. And so, a humongous congrats to y'all once again for getting that correct. And with that, it's time for us to move on and into our first question of this segment. Matthew, what great question do we have first?
All right, so we do have a good question for our first one of the last segment here, and this one goes to none other than Wayne's World. He said, there's a rumor out of China that Zhang has escaped. No idea of the accuracy, and what are your thoughts?
And it's probably not accurate because I haven't heard of anyone ever escaping this sort of a deal before. Like, literally, the other vice chairman was arrested and stripped of all of his positions in October of last year, and he didn't break out. That kind of stuff is usually just people kind of clickbaiting, and if there's no real proof of that, then it's basically fabricated. Because, people just come up with stuff to get some attention all the time. Like, Khomeini was dead 2 days ago, according to some people. And let's see here. What else? Oh yeah, Putin's been dead about 8 times. Kadyrov's died about 9 times. Multiple Russian generals, including Gerasimov, Shoigu, and others, they've been killed about 20 times. Budanov has died about 6. Zelensky's died about 20. The President of the United States has died, according to some people, about 3 times at this point. And then there's all other crazy stories as well that come out about different groups and things that they've done and what's happened. We have no confirmation of that at the moment. So I would have to generally say that sounds to be fabricated news at the moment until we get further confirmation on that. And also people put out all kinds of stories. And another thing that would make that really hard to get, China is incredibly strong with censorship. So that would never make it out of the Chinese Great Firewall, because anyone who would have filmed that, they would have already been on their, the Chinese internal security services would already be on social media, making sure to completely wipe anything before it was even mentioned, or to set up an algorithm in place to completely delete or block videos that were attempting to be uploaded from a specific area during that specific point in time, if someone actually filmed it. So it won't
even get on social media. Like the moment you try to upload something, it'll run it through its detection algorithms before it even gets published, and they'll detect it and they'll prevent it from getting actually uploaded at all. That's how good the Chinese have gotten at censorship. They catch it before it gets even put out.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying it would be impossible for that news to even get out if that happens. So I would assume that it would be fabricated information that happened. And also, it's really fanciful. I mean, when you really think about it, like 2 brigades, that's like 6,000 men are just going to drive through Beijing, go get in a firefight, and then 6,000 guys all in one clump are going to go driving away with a guy, and no one's going to do anything. I mean, and also, according to the story that people have been putting in the chat all night, apparently Zhang Youxia is being held in the Forbidden City in like as like Xi Jinping's concubine or something like that, because they said that a couple of Xi's men had been killed, and I'm like, they're not arresting the guy and putting him in prison or holding him anywhere close to Xi. Like, Xi is in a totally different place compared to where this guy is being held right now. He could be held in any city anywhere in China. I mean, it's like that's just the truth of it. It's like, so the whole story is made up. People are just trying to sensationalize something. Also, man, they got a kick out of me saying that.
That's insane, man. What are they doing? They're going to lock the general up and turn him into a prostitute? Like, what kind of theory is that?
Man, Xi Jinping had him brought in and said, "Go ahead and kiss me on my hot mouth. I'm feeling romantical."
Man, I'll tell you what, Xi Jinping's wilding out.
Yeah. I mean, they don't, they be looking for the honey wherever you can find it. You know what I mean? But anyway, so with that, we're on to the next one.
Who's there? It's Whitney. But anyways, jumping to our next one here. This one goes to Nick, who said, "Do you think the U.S. will wait until the market closes next weekend to strike Iran?"
Yes, I think that we're going to be waiting for a weekend when the stock market's closed, because an attack, like people are saying right now that an attack is going to happen in 2 to 3 days. One, the hype is so big that it couldn't happen. Usually it happens when nobody talks about it anymore. Two, if we attack Iran at night, it's going to be daytime here in America, and that means the stock market's going to be open. Because if we attack Iran in the most optimal time window, it's going to be about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe even 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. The stock market will still be open on any weekday, and they'll immediately be able to react to that when it happens. And considering that the current administration and prior administrations consider the stock market to be incredibly important as a display of economic prowess, and if it ever dips, it's an incredibly bad sign, they will wait till the weekend so that way the stock market cannot react. So I would assume it's probably going to be on a weekend. Might not even be next weekend. It might be the weekend after that, but it's definitely going to be a weekend, probably on, say, a Saturday night or maybe a Sunday. Well, more so for us here in America, it would be a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon. Those would be the highly likely attack windows. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to DG, who said, are those 2 tankers, those alleged Russian shadow tankers, still adrift in the Mediterranean?
We haven't gotten any updates on them today. We would assume that they are, because they were publicly stated to be unmanned and abandoned for the large part. So we would assume that they still are. But I haven't gotten any news today to confirm or deny that. But I do thank you so much for asking a great question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Yulfed, who said, do we have any further updates? Excuse me for the voice crack. He said, do we have any further updates on the power and internet outage in Greenland?
It appears that the power has been completely restored from what I was able to hear, and that's generally why there's been no updates given by anyone out there today, is because the power was restored and things are back to normal up there at the moment. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hachi, who said, what's more embarrassing for Xi, nuclear leaks or an attempted coup? I think the attempted coup would be not just embarrassing, that would be quite horrifying for Xi. So I think the nuclear leaks would be more embarrassing personally.
I would say, honestly, that would be far more embarrassing, to be entirely honest. Very embarrassing indeed. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, man, what are you talking about? The U.S. dollar is going down like a rock. What are you talking about?
It's having a bad time tonight. The U.S. dollar is. Let me go pull this up. Here we go. I just reposted it right now if you want to take a look at it.
Oh my goodness. What the hell is going on with this? Why is this happening? Oh.
Well, it's not unexpected. Let's just put it that way. I hate to see it, but it's not unexpected.
Why is this happening? Look at this, folks. I mean, the dollar
might have something to do with Europe dumping some bonds, possibly, maybe.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. Are we saying that Europe isn't weak and spineless and powerless? Oh, no. Who could have ever expected that pissing off allies could have consequences? Well, folks, looks like some people who were saying that Europe is completely powerless gonna be learning when they eating pea soup that they weren't. Like, it's not really proud of that. But our analysis is usually based in reality. So, not good looking. I'll tell you that. Not good looking.
Yeah. Also, people are mentioning this too. Silver is now like $108. Gold's above 5,000. I mean, that's the highest it's ever been in history. When that stuff starts happening like that, and it's still going through the roof, like it hasn't stopped, and there's no sign of momentum stopping on the prices of those commodities going through the roof like that. That's a sign that people are starting to lose faith in the fiat currency, which is the U.S. dollar and other currencies, and they're starting to put their money or their value into other investment vehicles like gold and silver.
Well, folks, I guess that's why we don't mess with our allies. That's probably why. Just putting that out there, we've been putting it out there for months, and everybody always wanted to say, oh, nobody can do anything to us, we'll just curb stomp everyone. Well, now it looks like it's our time to put our face under the boot of the Europeans. So maybe that's why we don't want to mess with people, especially our allies. Messing with our enemies, that's a great thing to do. Messing with our allies, that's not great. There you go. There's an example of it right here. So for people who thought they had it all figured out and they were going to tell Uncle Enforcers here that they were wrong and that nothing could happen, it's happening, so, it is what it is. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tex, who said, who would be the most likely to take over Iran in the event of the current government toppling? The Shah? And what preparation could they have taken to this point to swoop in and take control?
I have a feeling it isn't going to be the Shah, because I actually didn't mention these bulletins today inside of Iran because most of them were kind of non sequitur points and I didn't really find them worthwhile covering. But there was an important one here to mention that Reza Pahlavi said today. And he stated that the West is throwing Iranian protesters under a bus. So he's not going to be.
He's
the guy.
Going out.
Yeah, because
he's not going to be in charge of Iran.
He just insulted the greatness of the great and glorious leader, the President of the United States. And whenever you do anything like that, you're not going to be the one in the line for the United States to put you in. And considering that right now he's made this statement, the president will probably be going, I don't really like this guy. He's very suspect, because he just said something that's kind of criticizing him. Well, it is criticizing him. So, he won't be the guy. So it would be someone else entirely. Probably a no name, no face, nobody in Iran that we wouldn't even know of right now that would be picked by the United States to lead the country. So basically with this statement today, Reza Pahlavi basically threw himself out of the running to be the leader of Iran if the Iranian regime falls. So, and if you don't believe me, folks, the President of the United States threw Korea Marina Machado under the bus because she got the Nobel and he didn't. That wasn't even something that she had any action in doing. But then he threw her under the bus for that. So if you make a direct insult against the guy and say that he's throwing people under a bus and basically call it for what it is, he's certainly not going to favor you to say that you should be the leader of Iran. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next live chat question. This one goes to Varig, who said, how soon do you think Putin will steal the money of all the leadership from Iran as they settle in that country?
Oh, probably soon. They're in very desperate economic straits, so I don't really think they'd be able to sit around and let them simmer on that for a little bit. They'll probably have to take it from them as quickly as they could if the Iranian regime falls and they do flee to Iran. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Oh, dude, look, we got an Iranian bot telling us we're going to eat our words. I don't think we're going to be eating words.
I don't eat words.
I don't think we're going to be eating words. I think we're going to be spitting bars. And I think that a lot of your leaders are probably going to be ending up behind those bars here in the near future. Oh,
man, behind bars. Behind bars. Not in front of bars, not spitting them. Behind the bars. That's what they say.
Yeah. Oh, man. Keep that one around, Matthew. That one's entertaining. I want to hear something more from it. Is it more entertainment? But anyways, that
another one.
Wait. Another threat from an Iranian, please. Another threat from a pro committee Iranian, please. Please send one in. I would like to hear it. But anyways, with that, we are on. Oh yeah, this guy's a Pahlavi supporter.
For the Shah.
So wait a minute. You're threatening us over the Crown Prince. What are you talking about?
He's saying that the Shah is going to be in charge. He's saying we're going to eat our words about the Shah not coming to power.
I'm not going to lie.
The United States is going to come to power. I mean, if you insult the president's not going to let somebody get in charge if you insult him. I mean, that's just not the way it works.
I'm not gonna lie, that read off is like a straight up threat. Like for that to be about that, it's like you're gonna eat your words. I can promise you. When most people say that, they're about to say that they're gonna sock us in the teeth or something like that. But I would have to say, nah. If you like in the modern day, if you insult the president, you're not getting anything because the guy has an ego that's about as fragile as a glass house. So if you say anything about the guy, he's not. He's going to make sure that the worst things happen to you that are within his control. So like, and people in Iran in the streets might be calling his name, but people in Venezuela were also calling for Machado to be the president of Venezuela, and then what they got was basically Maduro's regime just reskinned, and with a slightly different leader, but literally the same policies and government. So, highly unlikely that will be happening in Iran, considering the statement he made today. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Michael, who put in a $2 super chat. Thank you very much, Michael, for that support. He said, "Did you hear about Russia shooting down their plane?"
No. Matthew, did you hear about that today?
Now, I didn't hear about that today. If it happened, it didn't cross any of my news radars. I've been scanning all day long. Like, I've been hounding that news.
Let's see here. I did not see any news about a plane getting shot down. Let's see. I see one thing that looks like a ripoff of some tabloid saying that 338 people died on a 747 or something like that, but that didn't happen because we would have heard about that. That was 3 days ago, according to that article, so we would have definitely heard about that. So unfortunately, I don't think that happened, but we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Noob. And the Noob said, with how hot the start of 2026 has been, what is the crew's prediction on World War III starting this year? And be it an Asian start or an expansion of the Russia-Ukraine war or even the Middle East? And it's hard to say exactly what's going to start it. Like, it's really hard to say because there's a lot of things happening that just pop up out of the middle of nowhere that you're like, oh, whoa, what's going on with that? And then some of them die off and then some of them get worse. So my guess would be the Russia-Ukraine war would probably end up starting it eventually because that situation has been persistent over many, many years and has the highest chance of probably kicking off a global conflict. But whether or not World War III starts this year, that's a question mark. I think it's in the works. I certainly do think it's in the works, but I don't know if it's going to start this year. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, it's really hard to say, honestly. But I will tell you that China and Taiwan won't be kicking off this year, that's for sure. But as far as the situation in the Middle East, this is definitely going to be kicking off very soon. A larger conflict down here. But an expansion of the war in Ukraine into the rest of Europe, that's a little hard to say because we're already very close to that happening. So the tensions are high at the moment. So we kind of have to wait for the tensions to boil on to an even hotter temperature to say, oh, that's definitely going to happen. Because right now, the truth is that could happen any minute. And it was like that towards the latter part of last year, and it's definitely like that now. So I mean, Europe could definitely kick off. Iran in the Middle East is certainly going to be kicking off. And China and Taiwan will still be a bit out into the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best we can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
I like it when anybody ever brings up like World War III possibly starting. There's always a small group of people that wants to be like an ostrich putting their head in the sand. They can't handle the like thought of that possibly happening. So they're like, shut up, stop saying it. You're just hyping up for nothing. It's like I'm sorry that you can't handle the discussion over that, but it's a discussion that has been had before by analysts because it's a real possibility. So it sounds terrible, which it obviously would be terrible. It's not going to mean like a nuclear hellfire though. Like it's not going to be an instant nuclear hellfire. In fact, it may never get to that point at all. It may just be ground conflicts, widespread across the entire world. It could be something like that. So we don't know what's going to look like. I think people instantly start thinking nukes when they start thinking about World War III, which wouldn't be the case.
Also, we have a very similar group like that. Whenever we just talked about the U.S. dollar falling, we're like, foreign policy decisions that are stupid do have consequences. And then some people are like, stop saying that. Don't be a traitor. Tracing. It's like, okay, so it's like, I don't think those people would make good business shareholders, Matthew, like if a shareholder of a larger company, if someone might come in and go, well, our company hasn't really been able to turn profits and benefit all of y'all as the shareholders. You liar! Don't say that! Say the numbers are going up, traitor! It's like, bro, calm down. It's like if bad foreign policy creates bad decisions or bad outcomes, that's what happens. Like, we're just the news reporters. If you don't like it, maybe you ought to ask the president not to do stupid stuff in foreign policy. Like, just being honest. Like, it's like, if the US dollar is taking a dip because a whole bunch of people might be selling some bonds that they're holding, it's like, well, we're just reporting on it. And the facts are the facts. Like, I'm not going to bend the facts around you to tell you things are going great, the economy's never been better, and it's getting stronger, because that would be a lie. And we don't lie on the channel. We just speak straight facts, and we usually have stuff to back it up. And we have graphs and facts to back that up. So if you don't like that, maybe you ought to realize that maybe those foreign policy prerogatives that you're blindly supporting might not actually be the best for the country. It might not be best for our foreign interests. I'm not trying to get political there, but on foreign policy, there's clear paths and actions to be taken. That's not even really up for debate. It doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. There's clear actions that are taken that are going to be within the U.S.'s interests, and then there's ones that aren't. And a lot of the actions that we're seeing so far, in statements and in actions, are not that good for American interests. And now we're starting to see that it's starting to have some consequences, like we said it would, and like some people wanted to believe it wasn't going to have. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next question here goes to Avari Mandabratis, who said, what could Iran do to provoke the U.S. to attack during the week? And what offensive action or insults could they take to make the U.S. act whilst the markets are open?
The U.S. is not going to act during the weekend. There's basically nothing that Iran can do outside of a preemptive attack that would start U.S. military actions during the weekday, in my opinion. So if the ball stays within our court and Iran does not directly shoot at anyone in the Middle East during the weekday, we are going to still strike on the weekends, because we always do that. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Ella MC Wills Nafo, who puts in a really good question here, a live chat. They said, have either one of y'all tried or know anything about that Ukrainian FPV simulator? And sorry if it's a bland question, I'm just kind of curious about it, LOL. And sadly, I couldn't get to try it because I was actually going to try it, but the problem is, though, it's not actually compatible with Mac. So I have a Mac and I don't have a PC, so I couldn't play it. And also, you have to have a controller, I think, for it as well, which I was like, well, I don't want to, I can't even play it, so I have no point in getting a controller. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't have a controller, sadly, so I wasn't able to play it. It looked really cool, and I did want to play it, but then it was like it requires, I believe, an Xbox or a PlayStation controller, and I don't have either. So I didn't get
FPV drone controller, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a legit controller. It's a real sim.
I downloaded it a while ago. This was like weeks ago, so I think I forgot what kind of controller it said. And then I was like, damn it, I can't use it. But I didn't have the controller. And generally that was kind of like the killer for me. I was like, well, damn, if I don't have a controller, that's it kind of for me. And also there's really no other games that I could use that kind of a controller for, or anything else that I do that I could use a controller like that for. So it'd be kind of a pretty expensive cost to try the game, sadly. So I was like, well, I tried, but I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Saya, who said, what's the favorite movie? And thanks for keeping us updated.
Oh, favorite movie, huh? Oh, let's see here. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is pretty good. Star Wars movies are pretty good. I'm talking about like the original Star Wars movies. The prequels and the sequels, I'm not really a big fan of. Let's see here. What else? 12 Angry Men, I watched that movie. That was really good. That was a great movie, actually. So I would say that out of all my favorite movies, gee, probably go with one of the Lord of the Rings movies, honestly, like coming to think of it. It's a cinematic masterpiece. I'm not really a big one for fantasy, but it was great storytelling and great cinematography, and it was very captivating. So I'd probably say that. So with that, I hope that does address that. Well, Matthew, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, I think the other day I said Interstellar. I think that was what I said the other day. Another pretty good movie out there, like The Godfather was pretty good as a movie. Schindler's List was a little bit dark, obviously, but it was a pretty good movie from that perspective. Let's see here. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to put my mind to the task here. I'm trying to think about this. I'm not really thinking of many movies off the top of my head. Ratatouille was pretty good for talking about cartoons. I said that the last time, I think, as well. But outside of that, though, what about The Great Escape? You remember that movie? That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Also, someone said, "Stop! They're trying to get your password info." I believe me. That's not a question. That's not a question that I'd use.
Now that guy who has to follow a question is the one you got to worry about. He's got you to spill the beans just then.
Well, like, look, like I've never told y'all anything that would ever give away any of that sort of stuff. So, no. Like, but anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, our next question goes to Marie, who said, with all these top military people being purged in China, would you agree that this sets back any near future attack on Taiwan, or would the new people rush into an attack in LSA?
I'd say it might, because if they think that there's some sort of a strategic blunder that's going on, there's massive leaks within the PLA in terms of intelligence, they might actually hold off on an invasion of Taiwan to try and root out those issues. So they might actually push it back a little bit, but it's not going to be by a whole lot. They're probably going to get on top of things really quickly here with that and try and root out anyone who might be leaking secrets to the U.S. if it's possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from AF Kaplan, who said, assuming that the nuclear breach did occur, why did the Chinese general do this? Did he have opposition to the invasion of Taiwan potentially, or was there another reason?
I would generally say that he probably doesn't have any issue with the invasion of Taiwan, because that would actually be something that the PLA heavily supports, because they're a traditional Maoist Leninist sort of a group, and because of that, they believe that all of what Mao Zedong declared as communist China should be a part of China, and that includes Ladakh, or this area of Ladakh right up here, Arunachal Pradesh, and also Taiwan, along with a couple of other small territorial holdings. So they'd actually be a big fan of invading and taking Taiwan, but what they're not a big fan of is the internal political developments that are going on under Xi Jinping's leadership, which they find to be an affront to their original staunch traditionalist form of thought that they have inside of the country. And that's really where the issue lies. So I would say that it's not really over the Taiwan situation, it's more so over internal political developments in China, and that's where the main schism is being caused at the moment. And I would also have to say that he probably shared those nuclear secrets to the United States, in my opinion, because the guy probably became highly disillusioned with what China is turning into on the inside, and that's why he flipped, and then he went and told the United States whatever they wanted to know about key nuclear arsenal information. And so, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're also on to the next one. Also, by the way, someone said Siberia is claimed by China. No, it's not. There's a map of official claims. Let's see, official land claims of the People's Republic of China. Let me go and get this for y'all, so that way I can show you. Let's see here. So these are the countries that are involved with territorial disputes currently with the People's Republic of China. Japan and its territorial dispute with China is over the Senkaku Islands, which are these little islands right here. And the only reason China wants them is because Mao said that that's theirs, and also it's for territorial water reasons. Also, they have an issue with Taiwan because they claim the entirety of the mainland of Taiwan and its smaller islands are a part of China. They also have issues with the Philippines because they say that the 9-dotted line by Mao, which pretty much pointed out that the Chinese owned everything, including the Paracel and Spratly Islands within the South China Sea, are theirs. The Spratly Islands are Filipino, and for that reason, they have conflicts with the Philippines. They also have some conflicts with I believe this is Malaysia as well, over the same reason in the South China Sea, and Vietnam over the Paracel Islands. Then they get into issues with Bhutan, right here, over small little, it's literally a small sliver of land right down here. The Chinese claim it, and also Bhutan claims it, but Bhutan doesn't have an army, so there's a little bit of a problem there, at least for them defending their territorial sovereignty. And then India has a pretty significant land schism with the Chinese over this little bulb. Let me see if I can show this to you. This little bulb right here that I'm circling with my mouse cursor, the Chinese claim that that's theirs, and they actually control it at the moment, but the Indians dispute it and say that that's the Indians' land, and the Chinese have no control over it. China has basically no territorial ambitions in Siberia and have no pressed land claims on that area currently. There are some very small islands in the Amur River on the border between Russia and Manchuria that China does claim that Russia controls, but the Chinese never really made that big of an issue over those, at least in the recent decades, because they're not really important at all, and it would destabilize diplomatic relations with the Russians over islands that are strategically and economically insignificant, and also have nobody living on them for that matter as well. So China does not have any official land claims on Siberia, and that's also why when people say, well, you know, with Russia being weak, wouldn't they just roll up on into Russia and take all of that? And the answer is no. Also, on top of that, China wouldn't want to take it because the area is wildly underdeveloped, and most of the cities are incredibly spread out, meaning that any form of enforcement action or administrative activities would be pretty difficult to pull off in that area and pretty expensive, especially compared to the rest of China, where the infrastructure is well built out, the population centers are incredibly dense, and it's a lot easier to administer and control for that reason. China just wouldn't get any real value out of Russia, because the truth of the matter is, folks, is that this area of Russia in Siberia is economically depressed. There's basically no money made, and in reality, even with the little amount of money that Russia gives to these far reaches in Siberia, they basically are still losing money on them because they hardly turn anything is in form of a profit, even in tax revenue for the Russian government, much less China. So they'll never do that. This area of Siberia will remain a part of the Russian Federation or some future successor state to Russia well on into the future, in my opinion. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So our next one goes to Coleslaw, who said there's now a power of vacuum. I think meant to say a power vacuum in China. And how was power of vacuum? That was a pretty good one. But Coleslaw said, now that there's a power vacuum in China, how was Xi going to bring in more trustworthy people if they're going to be new?
He's probably going to try and pick people who have been said to have high loyalty to him, most likely by some sort of CCP leadership who believe that they have high loyalty, and then he'll select those guys. That's what I would assume at the moment. And also, they have to come from the PLA, like the vice chairmans have to come from the PLA, but they'll most likely be heavily vetted by the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party, and then they'll figure out who to pick. So I think that's probably how they're going to work it, because the CCP is staunchly loyal at this point to Xi, so they'll be able to root out anyone who they would believe has questionable loyalties, in my opinion. So that's probably how they'll do it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a question from Armchair Expert, who said, if Ukraine got hold of long-range missiles this year, what would they strike first? And do you guys think, apart from oil and energy?
They would definitely strike Russian war industries, so that wouldn't count. They would most likely start to strike Russian airfields in heavier numbers, and also Russian ground arsenals. Those would probably be one of the most common sorts of targets to be hit outside of industry and the electrical grid, because those would pose a significant amount of damage to Russia's strategic power projection capabilities, especially within the region. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Nico, and he said, any updates on the Greenland power outage situation?
From what we know, power has been restored and everything is pretty much back to normal up there. So I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have one from Water Barley yet again. They said, if the U.S. attacks Iran, do you think there will be boots on the ground along the Iraqi border ingress to Iran?
I would doubt it. I think that the current administration is heavily against putting boots on the ground, unless if it's literally for like 20 minutes, like they did in Venezuela. So I don't really think there would be any larger land operations conducted in Iran. It would most likely just be airstrikes. And on top of that, Iran does have a lot of geography that's in its favor, considering that it's a wildly mountainous country through most of it. That would make it rapid movements of infantry on the ground itself a wildly difficult sort of a prospect, especially for front-wide maneuver. Like, for example, in Iraq and Afghanistan, when we were conducting military operations there, a large amount of our military operations in Afghanistan were focused in the southern part of the country around the Kandahar province, or they were focused around Kabul. We would have outposts in other places like the Hindu Kush Mountains, or basically Kamdesh, and those sorts of regions, but those were pretty far-flung locations. There was not a heavy amount of force presence there, and it was also very difficult to project any troops in that area. We also had some troops elsewhere in the country, but once again, in a lot smaller concentrations than you would see in the southern flatlands of Kandahar or around the capital of Kabul. A similar situation like that would exist in Iran, to where you really can't see larger front-wide operations like in Iraq, where the land is perfectly flat and easy for larger formation movements and deployments. So if anything happened in Iran, it would probably be pretty localized sorts of deployments. To be entirely honest with you, I'd have a feeling that if we did anything in Iran with boots on the ground, it would pretty much require us to try and conduct airborne operations to seize airfields and then just start flying people in. And that's a very tough sort of an operation to conduct. That's something the U.S. could do within reason if we did that smartly and didn't go too ambitious with it. We could definitely do something like that, but I just don't really think that any sort of heavy ground maneuvers with large amounts of units would really be possible due to Iran's geography. It's very similar to that of northeastern Afghanistan. But anyways, with that, well, not extremely similar. I mean, that's basically the foothills of the Himalayas. Those are incredibly tall in altitude and very difficult to navigate. And Iran has somewhat similar geography. The mountains are not that big, but they're still formidable obstacles, especially for any easy movement. So that would be a great limiter there. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Dino, who said, why does Xi Jinping get compared to Winnie the Pooh, and does he really enjoy honey?
Oh, he just looks like him. Like he just looks like the guy.
I appreciate they spell honey like they do in Winnie the Pooh, like Hunny, like honey.
So if you look at him, I mean, he just looks like Winnie the Pooh. I mean, he really does. The similarity there is uncanny.
Follow the comparison pics. What Xi Jinping, Winnie the Pooh.
Let's see. Let me pull this up off screen just to make sure the results are... Let's see here. Here we go. You know what? I'll get this one because I don't know if Disney would like that. But here you go. I mean...
Oh, my goodness. What the hell?
Well. I mean, we'll just show one. He kind of looks like him. So, he looks like him so much. It was actually the Chinese citizens who, I think, made that claim first. They're like, he looks like Winnie the Pooh. And then they started making all of these jokes on the internet about it. And then if there was ever a protest, they would call him Winnie the Pooh. So then they've completely banned any mention, of Winnie the Pooh in China. It's completely banned, I believe, on social media for the larger part, and comparing Xi Jinping to Winnie the Pooh, I believe, is some form of defamation against the state, which is a crime, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So, with that, I hope that does address that.
It says here, Chinese censors have banned the release of Christopher Robin, a new film adaptation of Winnie the Pooh. Also, it says Winnie the Pooh is not explicitly illegal to own in China, but it's heavily censored online due to memes comparing it to the president Xi Jinping. Winnie the Pooh has become a symbol of resistance in China.
Man, Disney's PR department, man, has a panic attack over that about every day. Like, it's like, oh no!
Oh man,
oh man,
that's crazy. That's crazy. They're that sensitive. They gotta ban Winnie the Pooh or like try to heavily censor it so that way the leader doesn't have oh man, he gets compared to Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, honestly, it's like, that's honestly kind of hilarious. I bet you, well, I won't say it. I'll hold my tongue on that one. But anyway, so that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best we can. And also, I saw someone in the chat say something interesting, a historical thing that we can talk about here. I saw someone say, the U.S. has lost every single war, basically every single... Oh, here we go. Someone said, let's be honest, the U.S. has basically lost in every major military conflict they put boots on the ground in. Sad but true. That is sadly untrue. I don't know where you got that from, but that's not true. Most conflicts that we put boots on the ground in, we win. It's very rare that we don't win them, and if we don't win them, they usually end in a stalemate. So let's go through a couple of the examples. World War I was a victory. World War II was a victory. Basically every single conflict we've ever fought in Central America or on the islands around Cuba was a victory. The Spanish-American War was a victory. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, our war against Mexico in the 1840s was a victory. Our war against every Native American tribe was a victory. Our war against the British in the first attempt was a victory. Second time was stalemate. Let's see, what else? Korea was a stalemate, but that's because the Chinese got involved. So, the North Koreans had that going for them. Vietnam was a stalemate, and then they lost after we left. Or technically you could kind of word that one as the only defeat that I could think of really in a modern sense. And that one stuck with people, like the French losing to Germany in World War II. But the thing about Vietnam, and this is kind of the caveat to it, is that South Vietnam collapsed 2 years after we left, well, actually 3 years after we left, because the U.S. completely withdrew from Vietnam in 1972. South Vietnam fell in 1975. Not a soul of the United States Army was on the ground except for the U.S. Marine Corps as the embassy staff in Saigon when South Vietnam fell to the North Vietnamese in 1975. So is that really a defeat if you're not there? And the answer to that, to me, is no. When we were there, we ended that thing on a stalemate with the Paris Accords in 1972, and then we left. Then South Vietnam lost when the war was restarted years later. So you can argue that as a defeat. I don't really look at that as a defeat. I look at that more as a stalemate. Because if the U.S. Army isn't there on the ground, and it isn't being defeated on the ground, then it's not a defeat. The French were defeated by the Viet Cong in the Battle of Dien Bien Phu in 1954. They were actually beaten and destroyed. That is a true defeat. The U.S. were were basically hamming on North Vietnam until we left in 1972. And while a lot of people would be like, well, 50,000 dead doesn't sound like hamming on them, well, you have to consider that at the same time there were several 100,000 North Vietnamese that died in that conflict due to direct U.S. military activity. So we're talking about a ratio there. The U.S. was winning most engagements against the North Vietnamese, basically in most battles during the time we were there. But then moving on over into the Middle East, we've won a decent myriad of wars inside the Middle East. We won the Gulf War of 1991. We won the Iraq War of 2003. We won the war against ISIS, at least as a direct land holding, in the middle of the 2010s. While they're still around, they don't have a state. So that was a victory. We lost in Afghanistan. That was a straight up defeat. Because U.S. forces were still there on the ground when that actually fell, so that was a defeat. But outside of that, if you talk about most ground conflicts that the U.S. has been involved in, and I'm not even counting all the smaller ones like the U.S. invasion of Panama in the 80s, the invasion of Grenada, so on and so forth, there are a large amount of U.S. victories. Far more victories than there have been defeats, especially whenever there's soldiers on the ground. So I hope that it addresses that well, but I feel like that sort of stuff is that defeatist sort of propaganda that's put out by people nowadays in America to make it sound like our country is lost. It's not lost. I mean, most of the time, if America goes somewhere, we're going to usually win. I mean, hell, if we even want to talk about Venezuela, I mean, we opened up the war against Venezuela in 1 hour, and then 2.5 hours later, it was over, and we had achieved apparently our only combat objective, which was capturing Maduro alive. So by every measure, most of the time the U.S. is quite successful in ground operations. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a question from Ruben, who said, why does China claim to be a near-Arctic nation?
I don't know. That's actually insane. Like, they're nowhere close to the Arctic. They are a middle Pacific country. I mean, not even middle. They're not even close to the equator. It's kind of like a northern Pacific country. Definitely not near Arctic, though. They have no territory near the Arctic. And really no projection abilities into the Arctic either. But anyway, well, kinda. They have some icebreakers, but they have no way to really support those long term up there from what I would know. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And believe it or not, we actually only have one question left in the spreadsheet. We've gone through over 26 plus a live chat questions tonight. We've gone through a hell of a lot.
What do you mean, Sonny? The stream's ending early tonight. What the hell?
That's all we have. Like, that's all we got.
What the hell, Sonny?
Oh, man.
Aw, man, it's time for me to go and do more questionable stuff. Aw, man. But with that in mind, everyone, it's time for us to get on to our final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Addy, who said, how far is China likely to go in consolidating territory? And will its ambitions be limited to Taiwan, or could they extend to other regions in the Asia Pacific?
I would say that China's ambitions, I don't really think it'll be going much further into the Eastern Pacific. They really are looking more so to be able to have hegemony within the area of Asia, which is something that's threatened at the moment because South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, and multiple other countries within the area, including Australia, New Zealand, and others, generally do not really lean towards the Chinese direction. They actually lean towards the Western sphere of influence. So in my opinion, that's really more so their goal, because they're not really looking to, say, seize Hawaii or take Guam from the United States, because that would most likely lead to some sort of a tactical nuclear exchange, and they would know that. But they definitely would be looking to bring pretty much all of our allies in East Asia into their sphere of influence eventually, and completely delete the U.S. from being an existent power anywhere within East Asia, or really anywhere within Asia for that matter, also including the Indian Ocean as well. So I would think that that's generally what they're looking for as a grander strategy at the moment, because that's also what we've been hearing for years in the multiple plenums of the party congresses that they have, where they generally state what their foreign policy ambitions are, which is national rejuvenation by 2049, which largely demands that they try and create a sphere of influence around themselves and largely remove American influence out of East Asia, but, once again, not deleting us out of the Eastern Pacific or anywhere else. So with that, I hope that does address that the best that we can. I got to say, folks, it's an entire honor and a pleasure to know that so many people have been here with us tonight and have been enjoying our news. Over the course of this night, we have had 18.3 actually, for rounding up. 18.3 thousand people have been here over the course of the night, and I've got to say, a humongous thanks to all of y'all so much once again for watching. It's an entire honor and a great pleasure to know that we get to run news like this for y'all every single night. And not only that, we've been able to raise a massive amount through the fundraiser once again for none other than Razom for Ukraine. And so a massive thanks to y'all so much once again, and also a big shout out to Parpig Potato, who threw in a 2, and Michael Lucero, who threw in a 2, and a massive thanks to y'all for helping this channel to keep on running, even at the end of a Sunday night fundraiser. And so with that, folks, we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to make tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we appreciate every single one of you for joining us tonight. We've had over 131,000 people here by the end of the stream, which is a whopping amount of people. And also, the fundraiser has done fantastic yet again. Over $3,300 raised tonight for Razom, which is fantastic and does a great job to help those in Ukraine. And we appreciate that very, very much. We will see you all on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream, and maybe for a short war video tomorrow if there is enough news to cover. But in the meantime, though, thank you all for watching once again, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.